Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, not Enforcer Official, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1338 of the War News stream. And we have very big news today that U.S. officials sent the B-1B strategic bombers down to Venezuela today and spooked the hell out of the Venezuelan government. Also, the Russian fighter jets violated Lithuanian airspace, and also Putin is seething today after the major U.S. sanctions start to take hold, and also China and India is also backing off of the Russian economy. Also, by the way, a side note, the real Matty B in the live chat there is actually your boy Enforcer Matt. For some reason, YouTube changed up the naming convention, and there's my full government name. But anyways, it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, everyone, we are going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, which has been incredibly significant. And also, by the way, Matthew, I can hear myself sometimes coming back in reverb through your mic. But nevertheless, we have major and significant news to cover over the past 24 hours alone, beyond the fact that YouTube has changed every single one of y'all's names, including ours. So, before anyone asks the question for the 100th time of why we changed our names, we didn't. YouTube did, and I'm not really happy with it. YouTube, change it back. I don't like this at all. But nevertheless, we will be making sure to get into the major news that we've been able to hear throughout the course of the day, as we have been able to hear that Venezuela has now deployed its armed forces to the coastline, including its air defense forces, to prepare for an eventual attack by the United States of America, which appears to be highly likely, if not inevitable at this point, within the next several days. We have also been able to see that there has been some very significant developments as well that have been going on inside of the area of the Eastern Caribbean, as multiple flights of B-1 Lancers were conducted today, and a significant military operation was seen off the east coast of the Caribbean. While at the same time, we have also been able to hear that there has been additional footage and information published by U.S. Southcom within the area of the Pacific that is showing us that U.S. forces are continuing to conduct force preparedness and standing readiness to be able to make sure to face down the upcoming threat, which will be the Venezuelan government, as it appears that strikes are pretty much going to be inevitable at this point. We have also been able to hear some major news that the Russian Federation is incredibly enraged due to the fact of the U.S. sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil yesterday. And multiple comments have been coming out from the Russian government, not only speaking about how this is once again largely war, but also stating that they will be looking at conducting significant reprisals if possible here in the future. In the meantime, Russia violated the airspace of Lithuania with a flight of an IL-78 and an Su-30, which ended up passing into Lithuanian airspace near to the area of the Lithuanian town of Kybartai, which is directly along the Kaliningrad border. And we have also been able to see that the United Kingdom intercepted a Russian warship that was getting somewhat closer to the British coastline within the North Sea. France is also saying that they have to be ready for war incredibly soon, and it actually appears that the Republic of India and the People's Republic of China are actually backing off of the major trade that they have with the Russian Federation for their crude oil and petroleum products, possibly leaving the Russians alone to pretty much find out this whole thing on its own. At least it seems that that may be the case, at least at this point. We are going to be making sure to cover all of the major news that we have over the past 24 hours and everything else in between, starting with our largest stories first and then working our way on through the night in terms of importance and relevance. As many of y'all know, it is an Enforcer tradition. And of course, everyone, we're going to be making sure to get on into all of the news tonight while everyone just found out in the chat that y'all's names have been changed. And it looks like a lot of people are shocked by that. Just to quickly explain to y'all what this is, YouTube has decided in all of their amazing knowledge and excellence that they are now going to, instead of using everyone's real account names, like, you know, for example, me being the Enforcer in the chat, now they're using our channel handle, which is @EnforcerOfficial. So if you see @EnforcerOfficial in the chat, that's not some random guy, and I didn't change the name. That's our user handle for this channel, and YouTube is now forcing us to use that instead of making us use the Enforcer name. Now, Enforcer
Honestly,
Matt is real Matt Blev.
What a garbage change, honestly. Like, I gotta admit, usually I give YouTube the benefit of the doubt on stuff like this, but if anybody from YouTube's listening, please, I beg you, please change that back. This is truly an awful change right here. Like, I don't understand the logic behind it. They ought to change this back quick.
Yeah, this is just absolutely ridiculous, folks, and also it completely destroys our branding, because instead of us being the Enforcer now on YouTube, we're now @EnforcerOfficial, which is absolutely stupid, and I don't even understand it at all. Like, we still show up as the Enforcer on YouTube, by the way. If you look at our channel, it still will be the Enforcer, but if we ever type anything anywhere in the comments section or a live stream or anything, instead of it being the Enforcer, which makes a lot of sense because that's our brand name, now it's @EnforcerOfficial, and Enforcer Matt isn't even Enforcer Matt. He's been completely kicked off of the brand, and now he's just real Matt Blev. So ridiculous, honestly. I don't even understand it. But beyond that, folks, we will not be perturbed. We will continue on with our news coverage as normal tonight, except for our usernames. And so with that, we are going to be moving on into the major news of the day. And we have been able to see that there has been a significant development within the area of the Eastern Caribbean. Today, the United States of America has undertaken the flight of two B-1 Lancers, call signed BART 21 and BART 22, within the area of the Eastern Caribbean. This development was a fairly significant one and was spotted on flight radar and flight watcher as these aircraft conducted flights incredibly close to the Venezuelan coast. We actually did get the flight tracker data here, at least for one of these B-1 Lancers, which was openly identified on flight 21 or flight radar 24 as two B-1 Lancers. Barb 22 is actually one of those aircraft that was directly involved within the operation. Multiple people observed the aircraft flying within the area, including that of the Venezuelan government, which appears to have gone into an absolute state of panic when apparently the B-1 bombers that took off from Dye's Air Force Texas today conducted a bomber attack demonstration near Venezuela, mirroring the B-52 operation carried out on October 15th. In relocated developments, an E-11A aircraft operating under the call sign BAC November 06 had arrived in San Juan, Puerto Rico. The E-11A serves as a specialized communications relay satellite platform, providing high-altitude connectivity to enhance situational awareness and interoperability among joint forces. Infrastructure activity remains ongoing at the former Roosevelt Roads Naval Station in Ceiba, Puerto Rico, with a sustained influx of equipment and material at a high operational tempo. Indications point toward an expansion of U.S. operations across the Caribbean, likely involving both air and naval elements directed against cartel targets within Venezuela or other regional locations. It remains unclear whether ground elements such as the USMC or elements of the 160th SOAR will be committed. We did get to confirm, however, on Flight Radar 24, the flight inbound of the E-11 that was spoken of earlier, just a moment ago, that was flying from an area from central Georgia. I forgot the name of that Air Force Base. I believe it's Moody Air Force Base, and down towards the area of Puerto Rico. We did also get to see that later on today, about an hour before we went live, this very same E-11 had actually taken off from Puerto Rico and actually was now returning back to its airbase of origin inside of Georgia, and once again showing us that a significant operation had been conducted today, at least with the B-1 Lancers. Not only that, we also were able to see that these B-1 Lancers were supported by in-air refueling tankers. And we actually were able to hear the recording of this, at least for a moment, from the air traffic controllers near to the area of the MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida.
2-1 flight, we would like to pick up our flight plan directed soon, so...
These are also the refueling aircraft that were involved, which were KC-135 tankers taking off from MacDill Air Force Base, confirming the flight of the B-1 Lancers within the area due to the large amount of additional supporting aircraft, including the E-11, which took off from central Georgia, and the KC-135s, which took off from Tampa, to support the operations of these B-1 Lancers. In short, these aircraft did conduct an operation that is wildly similar to that of the B-52s. These are actually the two separate flight paths and the visibly observable flight paths that we were able to see on flight radars that showed the paths of the B-52 bombers and the B-1 Lancers near to the coast of Venezuela. As we can note, the B-52 bombers, all of them pretty much being based out of Barksdale Air Force Base in Shreveport, Louisiana, took off and flew into the area of the Gulf of Mexico. Their transponders were then turned on near to the airspace of Cuba, near to the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, flying through this area, and then we were able to see the transponders were turned off and then turned on again for a very brief moment, somewhere near to the area of Jamaica, and then they flew onwards, turning on their transponders once they were within range of Puerto Rico, and then conducting their simulated bombing runs, at least outside of Venezuela. On the other hand, the B-1 Lancer flight, which did not comprise of 3 B-52s, but instead of 2 B-1 Lancers, was conducted out of Dyess Air Force Base, with these B-1 Lancers showing up on flight radar temporarily for a very short duration of time, heading towards to the area of Dallas, Texas. The transponders were then turned off, and then the aircraft reappeared directly off the coast of Venezuela after conducting their longer flight. Once again, folks, we're not entirely sure where these B-1 Lancers went. This is a very rough approximation, this dashed line, of where the B-1 Lancers flew. We know that they did not fly over Cuba because the airspace is completely close to the United States. Does Cuba have really any ability to enforce that? No, but we're still going to try and avoid a diplomatic incident. So either they flew north of Cuba and then over Puerto Rico and into this area, or they took a very similar path through the Gulf of Mexico and in between the strait between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula and then down into this area, very similar to the flight path of the B-52 bombers. These are still very significant operations, and these B-1 Lancers, mind you all, were as close to Venezuelan airspace and Venezuelan territorial waters as you can generally get without actually getting inside of them, for that matter. We were not really able to gauge any Venezuelan Air Force response to this today either, unfortunately, as it does not appear that any visible response was made, at least by the elements of the Venezuelan Air Force, including their Su-30s and their F-16s. These aircraft did simulate bombing runs, however, from what we understand, near to the coast of Venezuela. And another very interesting thing about this flight path of the B-1 Lancers is that their furthest point, generally we could say the point of nearly no return, was right around these islands, the Los Testigos, which are directly off of the coast of Venezuela. These aircraft were flying in a somewhat southeasterly direction during these flight patterns, as y'all can see there, which appears to show that these aircraft, if they were launching any missiles, could have generally had a decent breadth of the entire coast coastline all the way from Caracas and all the way to the mouth, for that matter, of this particular river right here, which apparently has no name, at least on Google Maps. Unfortunately, I do not know the names of these rivers incredibly well, and before anyone says it's the Amazon actually exits inside of Brazil, so it is not the Amazon, it's another river within the area, but we do not know which one that is. The B-52s actually conducted a very interesting flight path, which very much allowed them to conduct missile strikes on the entirety of the Venezuelan coastline, all the way from Arecibo, all the way over to the area of the opening of the mouth of that river, way over here on the east coast, and generally allowing for them to make those launches a high likelihood. So a fairly interesting sort of a development to see, at least out of these two operations. And I also have to note to y'all, because, of course, we have to give you all the whole story here, that the President of the United States has stated that the flight of the B-1 Lancers, although they quite literally showed up on flight radar, to be fake news, and that is an absolute lie. Now, I do have to say that usually we would take government statements at face value. That government statement has to be thrown out, however. This is a 100% flight that was conducted. We did see this visibly appear on Flight Radar 24 with the transponders from the bombers turned on, so we have no doubt or any question that these B-1 Lancers did conduct a flight near to Venezuela today. Just really quickly to get that out there before anyone says, well, the president said this didn't happen. The president apparently doesn't know that they showed up on Flight Radar 24 with their transponders turned on for the whole world to see, and that also would be a fairly important thing to do, especially considering that this seems to be a very similar sort of a demonstration that the B-52s conducted from Barksdale Air Force Base. Still, outside of that, it does appear that while the Venezuelan Air Force was not visually confirmed to have responded, at least at any point here recently, we did get to see that they did respond in another way, which is with the deployment of the S-125 Pechoras along the coastline of the country. The S-125 Pechora is an incredibly old missile. These first went into service in 1961 inside of the Soviet Union. You can see that picture right there. This is about the time that they were actually introduced in the service. Since then, they have largely been considered obsolete over the subsequent decades since the 60s, but the Venezuelans still operate a fairly large number of them on their own, what we could kind of call a custom-made air defense system. These missiles are wildly outdated and do not have a significant range from what we understand. Pretty much everything about how the system operates has been unclassified. For the greater deal, in the collapse of the Soviet Union, the information about these weapon systems was fairly easy to get, and the range of most types, including the V600, which is the more advanced version of the Pechora, has a range of only about 22 miles, meaning that its range leaves a lot to be desired. To put this into comparison, a PAC-3 Patriot has a range of about 85 miles, so this thing is getting nowhere close to being able to defend a large catchment area of airspace in a modern era war. As a matter of fact, funnily enough, an A-10 Warthog could actually go up against this air defense system and destroy it due to its lack of range. The A-10 Warthog can actually use an AGM-65E, which is a modern version of the AGM-65 Maverick. These systems, or these specific air-to-ground missiles, actually have a range that's at least believed in the public to be roughly around 25 miles. The reality is that they may be able to go several miles farther, meaning that this simple air-to-ground missile can actually outdo one of Venezuela's most numerous and quote-unquote advanced air defense systems that they have inside of the country, which is the S-125 Pechora. We did see pictures of these along the coastline in fairly large numbers, mind you, in multiple different areas. Here are several of the Pechoras. Seen here, we can actually see one of the Venezuelan-made Pechoras over there to the right side of the screen, and one of these Soviet, and I'm not even kidding, Soviet-made Pechoras still on the Grad pretty much platform, also within the area as well. We can also see some supporting units set up with ambulances and such within this area as well, which is making it fairly clear that this is the deployment of at least one air defense battery wherever this picture was taken. We are understanding that this is somewhere around the Anzoátegui region, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is directly along the coast within this area of the country, roughly, and it does appear that they are trying at least to put up some sort of possible air defense if there was an attack that was conducted on Venezuela. We also saw further up the coast in a different location some more murky pictures, either the lens isn't clean or it was foggy, of several other air defense systems that have been set up, including the all-famous Gush gun, the Gush 23, which we can see right there, which has actually been deployed into its operational position with the wheels stowed and the supports being extended onto the ground. We can also see the air defense systems a little bit better up close. These are also incredibly old air defense systems as well. These are practically Buke M1s on a truck-based platform, and many of y'all have seen how the Buke M1s operate inside of Ukraine, in the Ukraine war on the Russian Federation side, which is quite poorly. Buke M1s are generally obsolete as well, a lot like the S-125 Pechoras. This still hasn't stopped the Venezuelans from deploying them, apparently, in somewhat larger numbers, as this appears to be an entire battery's worth of Buke M1 launchers that is currently along the coastline in this area just east of Caracas, which is also, once again, directly on the coast. Now, another thing that's interesting to know about the Buke M1, since we are huge into the military and analysis side of things, is that a Buke M1 or a Cube doesn't have a huge range. And let me try and get y'all here really quickly one of the lists of the ranges that a Buke would have. For example, a 9M38 missile, which is highly likely the one here in the center, is the one that's pretty much being used in these pictures. You can tell because there is a bit of a neck on the missile right near to the the midsection stabilizers on the missile. Y'all can see those right there. So this missile has a range, believe it or not, folks, of 19 miles, meaning that this is even shorter range than the S-125 Pechoras, although it does have a little bit more maneuverability from what we understand. Still, these missile systems are wildly short range. In a modern air defense scenario, you have to have a large caliber air defense system that is capable of reaching out to about, I would say, about 80 miles at least, to be able to consider it a competent air defense system. Having air defense systems that usually at the farthest, at least in larger numbers, they can only reach about 19 to 20 miles away, that is incredibly poor. This means that if this unit is in this part of the coastline, they are able to shoot their missile 19 miles out. So that far away from the coastline. Now let's compare that to a Patriot, which can extend its fire to 110 miles. So this is about how far a Patriot can fire from its actual battery that's been set up. This is about how far a Pechora or a Buke can fire in a radius around it, meaning that you have to have a huge amount of these systems, and not only that, the response time that you get with the missiles being fired is wildly small, because you only have 20 miles worth of response time before the target has completely overflown you and is pretty much leaving your air defense sector. This is extremely abysmal for the Venezuelans. And if the United States of America does conduct a strike, and this is the only air defense systems that they have of a medium range that are somewhat competent, this is pretty much going to be a one-sided fight in the U.S.'s favor, because they will have really no competent means of conducting any air defense. With that in mind, a lot of people have been talking about the B-1 bomber flight that's been conducted today down near this area of Venezuela by the U.S. Air Force's B-1 bombers out of Dyes Air Force Base. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this operation, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we did track them all day today. We saw the B-1 Bones heading all the way down to Venezuela, and they flew past a whole bunch of different places, including Cuba, and they flew all the way down there right to the coast of Venezuela, and then they suddenly turned around and did a U-turn before they got to Venezuelan airspace, and then they turned off their transponders, which had many people wondering, was an attack about to take place, or were they actually heading back to the United States? So we did not see an attack today. That's the bottom line. That's the spoiler alert right there. There was no attack, but nonetheless, though, we saw them go down there, and they turned away right before landfall. So what are your thoughts about that? And 53% said it was a good psyop against Maduro, while 21% said it seems like a practice run, and 20% said it was a total waste of time and money. So I would say it seems like a combination of a practice run for future strikes on Venezuela, and also it is a psyop too, because it is wearing down the Maduro regime quite a bit to think that they're about to get attacked overthrown pretty much every other day. It seems like it's a pretty big deal, at least mentally, for their whole mindset. So I would say a bit of both of them, actually. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would believe that it is probably a bit of both. It's a practice run for one, that's probably highly likely, and also it was a great psychological operation because it's continuing to keep the Venezuelans on high alert without any strikes happening at this point. Continuously keeping enemy forces on high alert like this for psychological operations are wildly successful for pre-action preparations to make sure that they're worn out and exhausted by the time we conduct their strikes. That means that while they will respond, that will be an inevitable certainty, they will respond with less efficiency, and not only that, they are also going to respond a lot slower, probably within about a minute or two later than what they normally would have. So this would give the United States of America at least an operational window to be able to conduct airstrikes and see that there's practically almost no response from the Venezuelans, at least on the ground in the air defense systems. So I would generally have to say I would agree with Enforcer Matt. It's generally a mix of the two. It seems a bit like a practice run and also a good psychological operation against the Maduro regime and the armed forces of Venezuela by continuously keeping them at a high state of alert because they do not know when one of these flights is actually going to turn into a proper attack. Another thing
Also, by the way, it's kind of funny today how the U.S. leadership was trying to convince everybody that this did not occur. We tracked this, by the way, on open source flight radar systems like Flight Radar 24, etc. This was in the wide open for the public to see it. So I'm not really sure what that was about. I'm not sure if maybe they're not aware that Flight Radar 24 is a thing or what, but this was openly, publicly trackable all day long. So the U.S. leadership's trying to convince people that this B-1 flight did not take place. But we saw the B-1 flights, we saw the refuelers also returning back to Florida. So, I mean, it was a whole thing that everybody saw today. So I'm not even sure why they're trying to cover it up. It's kind of odd.
I don't even know why either. It's absolutely a mystery to me why in the world they're going to claim that it never happened. It clearly did happen. We've seen it from every single angle. It did happen. But one thing I also have to say, folks, I got to say this because so many people are still mentioning this in the chat. I'm so sorry, everyone, for the name change thing. It's not something that we can control, though, because I see a lot of people saying, why did you change our names? We did not change anyone's names. If we could, we would have kept our name as is. And also, it looks like Matthew has been able to change its handle to It's Enforcer Matt, which is very good. Hopefully, we can change the channel's handle to The Enforcer, so that way we're not Enforcer Official at this point, because Enforcer Official, I'm not going to lie, sounds kind of a little goofy compared to The Enforcer. Like, it was fine when it wasn't being used for our actual username, but now it's apparently being used for our username, and now I'm like, I don't really like that because it completely removes the fact that that's me, the Enforcer, and not the Enforcer Official, which I don't even know what that would be. But to really quickly explain this to everyone, YouTube has decided, in their all wisdom and judgment, to start flipping everyone's name. So instead of using your username, they're using your handle. So whatever your handle was before this, that's what they're going with right now. There's no way to change that. There's nowhere you can go in the options menu to go and deselect that. It's just what YouTube's done. So I gotta say, I'm terribly sorry about that, folks. We wish we could change that on our end as well, so that way we could say, you know, it's the Enforcer or something like that, because I don't really like that too much. I'll be just completely frank with y'all. It kind of like really for us, at least on this end, it really is messing with our branding. And not only that, for a lot of y'all who have been here on the channel forever, it's messing with y'all's names that everyone knows and recognizes and has recognized for years, and nobody even knows who each other is anymore. And I'm trying to look in the chat right now and figure out who's who, because it's changed up some of y'all's names. I know y'all's profile pictures to a good degree, but I don't know y'all's new names well enough to pick it up right off the bat who is exactly who. But still, with that, I hope that does address the poll the best we can. And with that, we are going to be moving on into some other news that we've gotten about the Venezuelan situation, at least within the region, as we have been able to hear some additional developments out of Caracas, as we were able to hear that private jets started to flee the country in larger numbers, and that was 100% confirmed on flight radar. At least 4 private jets took off from the area around Caracas and pretty much started flying everywhere but Caracas. So it appears that a lot of the elites, if you want to call them that, or at least the significantly economic individuals of the country, are now packing up and leaving the country as quickly as they can, considering that there's most likely going to be impending strikes. We also were able to see one of these aircraft, which I don't really know if that's considered an executive aircraft in Venezuela. I guess it is. In America, that's like a weekend scooter for some folks. But that one was flying out of the country and getting the hell out of Caracas. So it does appear that a lot of people are leaving Caracas at the moment. I wonder what that's all about. I don't know. Maybe they're just taking a vacation all at the same time to different places to get out of Venezuela. A little bit interesting, if you ask me. We also saw footage that was published by U.S. Southcom's Area of Responsibility showing the Navy and the Marine Corps operating at sea City and also near to Roosevelt Roads. We can see here the large montage that they made showing the 20-second view and their rotary aviation conducting training exercises around the area of Puerto Rico. We can also see one of the LCACs unloading LAVs and also Marines being unloaded off of CH-53s.
A lot of marine equipment out here for sure. Look at all that stuff. Also, by the way, it's interesting how the U.S. has gotten into these, you know, I don't want to call it a propaganda video, but it kind of is to a certain degree, but these like military style, like cinematic videos. This is typically something I haven't seen from the U.S. military in a while. So they're kind of getting back to it, or they're actually starting to do it for the first time.
Man, I gotta be honest with you, it's all about that warrior spirit. Meanwhile, in Washington, man, it's all about that warrior spirit, because we all know that the warrior cast will save us all. But anyways, we have been able to hear that apparently the President of the United States has now stated that China is smuggling fentanyl through Venezuela to bypass U.S. and Mexican ports, which is interesting. So this is... I really don't know what to make of the analysis at this point, folks, but I'll give you all my 2 cents on what that seems to be making this out to be. So it still appears that we're trying to curb Chinese influence. But instead of curbing Chinese influence by overthrowing the Maduro regime, which is aligned with China, we're just going to bomb Venezuela and try and kill the members of the cartels, and then, in a sense, try and curb Chinese involvement in shipping fentanyl into the United States in some sort of an indirect way through those airstrikes. That seems to be generally what I can assess from the foreign policy side of things at this point, from the statements that were made today, and we also got an additional statement that apparently land action is coming soon, according to the President of the United States. So, once again, making it fairly clear, there is a war brewing with the Iranians, and that will be happening here in the future. And a lot of people are wondering about those private jets, oddly enough. And a lot of people are wondering, what in the world's going on with those private jets? Are they all leaving for vacations? Are they all just, going to the Super Bowl? What are they doing? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so we did see on Flight Radar just a moment ago that several private jets and also some private aircraft, kind of rinky-dink looking aircraft, fled Caracas, the capital, shortly before the B-1 bombers arrived right off of Venezuela's coast. And what are your thoughts? What was that all about? And 77% said it was Maduro's friends leaving Venezuela to go hide out elsewhere, while 14% said it seems a bit odd, but I need some more info, and only 4% said it was routine, normal flights. So I did see people earlier trying to argue that it was just routine flights that people were making a big deal about. But considering there's not a lot of rich folks that live in Venezuela, it's pretty much only the government, that pretty much narrows it down quite a bit. So the people on these private planes, in my opinion, were most likely either top government officials or they were friends of Maduro that happened to be very wealthy and have private planes, and they were taking off thinking the B-1s were actually going to strike Venezuela on their territory, and they were fleeing off to a private island nearby to escape the aftermath of it. So that shows you, I believe, in my opinion, what the cowards are going to do once these land strikes start. Maduro may run his mouth right now, but he is going to flee the moment these strikes really start happening. He's probably going to take off and go to an island nearby where there's a command center on the island. So he's going to hide out and let his people bear the consequences of his actions, and that's going to be basically the way it goes. So I think it was Maduro's friends likely leaving. But Enforcer, what say you?
Wait a minute, you're saying that they're all going to a private island?
Well, I mean, something like that.
Do they have a list?
Well, I've heard those lists aren't good things. They're not good things.
Well, we can only hope, folks. We can only hope that whatever private island they're flying to, they keep good records. Not for any particular reason, rather than just to keep them. You know what I mean? Maybe they'll release the list of all the Venezuelans that flew to this private island somewhere. But beyond that, though, I'd have to do the 78%. I think that the Maduro regime's loyalists are trying to flee the country, at least. There is not a lot of people, by the way, folks, that have private planes. And there's not a lot of them that fly to private islands. That's just not a Venezuelan thing. That's an American thing as well. There's just not a lot of people who fly to private islands. It's usually a particular sort of a thing or a particularity whenever anyone does fly to a private island. And always, weirdly enough, whoever owns these private islands, they always keep like these very meticulous records and lists of the people who show up and stuff, and when they show up, and what plane they showed up on, and with who, and all that. That's beyond the fact that nevertheless, I would say that that's most likely what's happening, is that a lot of these people are trying to leave. But if you notice their flight paths, though, which I'll go back and show you all the larger number of them that we saw earlier in the day, if you notice these flight paths, they're flying practically anywhere to get out of Venezuela. This one's going to Colombia, it appears. This one is probably going to Brazil. These two seem to be flying out somewhere into the island chains out here in the Eastern Caribbean to probably try and find refuge in one of those countries before they can fly further on out from there. So it seems that everyone's just.
It's Isla Margarita. That's where some of these private aircraft were going, was Isla Margarita. And there's rumors that there might be some type of command post or some type of temporary command base of some sort on Isla Margarita. But I'm not totally sure about that. But some of the planes were landing here. I'm not sure where the airstrip is on this island, but that's where some of them appear to be going.
Interesting. Interesting. What kind of airports do we have here? Jeez, this one is busted. Is
You think they could scrape the rubber off the runway? Honestly, they could like supply the world with rubber for a good year if they scrape that off.
Bruh, they got the shit smear runway here, right here. They got that rubber smear. Let's see, what other airstrips do they have on this island? So it looks like that might be the only one, but let's double check that just to make sure. Yeah, that is the only one. So if they're flying here, they're landing at this airport with the smear on the runway. So that is one busted up looking airport. I mean, look at the roof. It looks like it survived a wildfire. Is there a street view that we can get of this thing? Oh. Huh. I don't know about this, folks. I don't know about this. This is very questionable. My fellow Americans. Oh my god. Oh my god. This thing is kind of a little old and decrepit. I gotta be honest with y'all here. I don't know about this airport. I mean, if they have a secret bunker on this island, that would make sense. They clearly have put no money into the airport whatsoever. And also they have a National Guard station literally right outside the airport, I guess to execute any dissidents if they arrive. So, interesting to see. I would have to tell y'all, I do think that most of these people are fleeing the country. They might not even be going to Margarita's Island because, you would end up on Margarita's list. So they're probably going to be flying elsewhere to a place like Barbados or somewhere else like that. Maybe another country entirely so that way they can just get out of Venezuela and hope that the whole thing blows over and that for the United States to track them down, they're going to have to go and get involved in some sort of a diplomatic spat with another country, which the United States might not be that willing to do. So generally, that would be my 2 cents on this. I think that most of these aircraft are actually going to be leaving the country entirely, and that they're trying to just get out of Dodge. Now, with that in mind, folks, it does appear that at this point, we can pretty much guarantee that strikes by the United States of America are inevitable in some form against Venezuela. So we could, of course, analyze this in a million different ways. We could either go to the extreme, where the United States conducts a ground invasion of Venezuela, or we could go with the likely option, which is the United States of America conducting airstrikes inside of Venezuela. And if we are conducting airstrikes in Venezuela only, at least for now, there is a lot of different ways that we can do that. One, we will have to engage Venezuelan air defense systems and the Venezuelan Air Force to be able to open up the skies over Venezuela to create the proper kind of conditions for us to conduct air-to-ground strikes. So that does mean that interdiction missions or suppression of enemy air defense missions, aka SEAD operations, will be coming up here in the near future. This will mean that the United States Air Force or the United States Marine Corps' air forces based out of Puerto Rico will have to load up these neat little missiles called AGM-88 HARMS. And what these are special little missiles. They have a little sensor in them that picks up radiation, but not normal radiation like the type from Chernobyl that a lot of y'all are thinking of. They are picking up the radiation emitted by active operational radar systems. Every single air defense system on the planet, except for manpads, works off of some form of a radar system, and that radar is emitting a special kind of radiation. It's generally not harmful to most people or anyone for that matter, unless you're literally standing in front of it while it's operational, which isn't a good idea. But this little radar has a little nose inside of the nose cone, and it sniffs it out, and the missile will fly right towards that radar source. There is one way to defeat this missile, however, which is turning off your radar or shooting down the missile while it's still flying towards the radar. Most people, however, especially the Venezuelans, are going to go with the option of turning off of their radar so that way the missile can no longer sniff its way straight into that radar that's still active and operational. If the radar turns off, this missile completely loses track of where it's supposed to go, and it ends up slamming into the ground or exploding in the air, one or the other. But this does open up the window for, say, an F-35 with a laser designation system, which pretty much all of them have, to be able to drop a JDAM right on that air defense system because its radars are not operational, and it can't even see the F-35 that's right on top of it, even if the radars were on. So then at that point, we largely have destroyed most of the greater sized air defense systems, or the medium range air defense systems like the Bukes, the Cubes, and the Pachoras that the Venezuelans have, and that means that we can move on into deeper strikes on the Venezuelan Air Force. All of this happening usually within just about the first 2 hours. Striking the Venezuelan Air Force is something that most likely would become the responsibility of the United States Air Force, at least at the opening. Considering that the Marine Corps and the Air Force, most likely together, will be conducting operations against those Venezuelan air defense systems that we're seeing on the coast and also further inland, this means that we would not want to send in a manned fighter aircraft, or any sort of a manned aircraft for that matter, over Venezuela's airspace to try and conduct precise strikes on the forces at the Venezuelan air bases, like the Su-30s and the F-16s. That is where the B-1 Lancers or the B-52s would come in. The B-52s and the B-1 Lancers, at least in the modern day, operate off of a wide variety of cruise missiles that they are able to fire off of the aircraft. Let me see if I can find you all a picture of a modern loadout of a B-52 Stratofortress. So that way I can show you all the kind of missiles that they would use. There's a lot of them. ALCMs, JASSMs, so on and so forth. The list goes on incredibly long. But let me go get a picture, because I have to show you all this so that way you all know what I'm talking about here, if you've never seen one of these before. Let's see. There's got to be a picture of it somewhere. Here we are. So these little missiles right here, these are actually ALCMs, and I believe, actually no, those are ALCMs, and these are the JASSMs. The B-52 can actually carry a large number of either, and you can also carry some of these within the internal bomb bay as well. These B-52s would fly within a vicinity of the coastline of Venezuela, maybe about a couple of 100 miles off, or the B-1 Lancers, and they would just start dropping JASSMs and ALCMs. All of these JASSMs and ALCMs will already have their targets pre-loaded into them by GPS coordinates, and these missiles will then fly at low altitude over Venezuela to their targets, striking the airfields and hopefully either knocking out their sustainment and logistics systems that keep those air wings operational, or they will directly hit the aircraft inside of their hangars outright and destroy them before they can even get airborne. If all of this goes successfully, this pretty much opens up the way for air-to-ground operations, or ground strikes is what they're generally called by everyone out there in the world. But if that does not happen, and some elements of the Venezuelan air defense forces on the ground, like the Pachoras, the Cubes, or the Bukes, are still operational, or if some of the Venezuelan Air Force is operational, then we still move forward with air-to-ground strikes, but we also have to conduct air interdiction operations and also air superiority and SETA operations while those air-to-ground operations are still being attempted. So every single time a bombing run goes into Venezuela, they'll have to be accompanied by an F-16 with multiple AGM-88s on board, and also a couple of other supporting aircraft as well, to make sure that if anyone tries to engage and shoot down that bombing run, we can re-engage them either on the ground or in the air and take them down before they pose a threat to the air-to-ground strike groups. The air-to-ground strike groups will then most likely go in once the skies are cleared out, or mostly cleared out, and they will start to conduct laser-guided bombings on most cartel sites within the country. It actually appears at this point, folks, I don't really know how this is actually going to work in practice, but we are actually trying to target the cartels specifically in the jungles of Venezuela and throughout the entire country, so I really do not know what kind of breadth and depth of targets we would see being hit inside of Venezuela, we could see targets being hit in all major cities and also in the rural jungles and countryside of Venezuela, meaning that the entire country could be under an endless multi-week long airstrike campaign where U.S. intelligence figures out where cartel operations or cartel operatives are at, and then those areas are hit with a specific form of an airstrike, either a JDAM of a larger type, like a 2,000-pound, a 500-pound, or we could even see a Gensu bomb being used against high-priority targets that are within the cities to cut down on collateral. We don't really know the exact detail of how that will be done. That's, of course, up to the discretion of the commander of U.S. Southcom, which is still going to be Admiral Halsey until December, and we also know that that will also be up to the discretion of the Secretary of Defense and the President of the United States as well, because they also will be the ones setting generally what the rules of engagement are, and then they'll also count on Admiral Halsey, at least up until December, to follow through on that. So generally, that's what we're thinking air operations will look like, at least at the opening, for both the Venezuelans and the United States on both of our ends. But generally, we can be assured the Venezuelans will not be able to put up a large amount of resistance at all in any sort of an air combat scenario. That is one that we would easily excel in, and also generally be able to cause a significant amount of damage to Venezuela's air projection and air defense capabilities. But any sort of a land invasion, that is a huge can of worms in itself to analyze and break down how all that would turn out. But that one gets a lot more hairy and also a lot more detailed than even the analysis that we laid out just at this point. So with that in mind, folks, suffice it to say, we're in for quite a show, to say the least. Now, I do know that a lot of people are talking about this in the chat, and I do want to make it clear that the Enforcer channel, at least from considering the analytical and the strategic side of things, conducting actions against Venezuela in any major way just doesn't really make a lot of sense. At least to me. There are a lot of big fish to fry out there in the world, folks, right now, and I'd have to say that, well, no matter what sort of argument you're making for this action in support of it, I completely get all of them. I don't want you to think that I'm saying that any of them are stupid and they're pointless. I completely get that, for one, the cartels are a big issue, and I also completely agree that Chinese influence should be curbed anywhere in the world as much as possible. We are working to try and isolate the Chinese, and that should be a key prerogative. However, we also have a lot of other big things going on in the world right now that particularly takes the U.S. military's attention away from this area and elsewhere, and it needs to be elsewhere. We need to continue to focus our efforts directly against the Chinese. A war over Taiwan seems to pretty much be a certainty at this point within the next 2 years. Iran is working on a nuclear weapon. We have to stop that. That's a major military involvement guaranteed no matter what. And right now, we are starting to actively escalate with the Russians to try and force them into a ceasefire. And while I completely agree with the actions that the office of the president is taking in this regard at the moment, with the implementation of major sanctions against Russian oil companies, we also have to understand that this could force the Russians into a third world war. And while it's a good move, we still can't necessarily predict if the Russians are going to be reckless or not. And so we have to keep our eyes focused on the Russians in Europe and make sure that they don't pull a fast one on us, and then we're pretty much caught with our pants down while the Russians are invading Eastern Europe. That wouldn't be a good situation to be in. So we have to make sure that we prioritize our strategic prerogatives at the moment, and I would have to say that the Eastern European situation is probably one of the most important that we're seeing right now, right neck and neck with what's going on in Iran. Venezuela is taking third priority, at least out of these three main national prerogatives, just due to the fact that this is probably going to happen within the next 2 years. So it's nothing that's going to happen right now, but it's still coming down the pipe. Venezuela could be dealt with in 7 years' time from now, and the situation that Venezuela is in right now would pretty much be the same situation they're in 7 years from now. So generally, there isn't a rush to get to this. I would say, at least in my honest opinion, folks, I would generally get around to doing something to Venezuela as well if I was the president, whether people like it or not. The Chinese-aligned Venezuela is not good for the United States of America, especially considering that they're in the Caribbean and they're right next to a major shipping lane near Panama. So it's not good to have them there. We'll eventually have to get rid of them through one mean or another, but at the same time, not right now. There's a lot of other things that we need to be dealing with right now, and this is pretty much prioritizing last place as first place when it really is the other way around, at least to me. Still, outside of that, here on the channel, we're going to analyze everything no matter what. So while we don't really think, at least myself, that this is a really good move to make right now, and we have a lot of other more important things to do at the moment, we're still going to give this the full breadth of unbiased analysis that we can from a strategic perspective of how U.S. military actions against Venezuela are going to turn out and how the Venezuelans will be able to respond to it. And if this does happen, we are going to cover it from a pro-American perspective. I might not agree with it, but if we're going to get involved, America's going to win. That's how we're going to analyze it. So I want to make that clear up front before anyone sits there and says we're supporting the war in Venezuela. More so, we're supporting the United States, because if we don't support the United States, then you kind of default to supporting the Venezuelans, and that's a far worse position to support than any, really, and I don't understand why anyone would ever expect us to try and make that sort of a move. So, with that, I hope that does address that the best that I can, at least from the whole analysis perspective side of things with what's going on in Venezuela right now. And it is time for us, folks, to move on into the rest of our news for the night, which is also wildly significant, including what appears to be the beginning of the end for Russia completely on an economic level. But before we get into that, folks, I do have to say, what a night it has been already. It has been a crazy night, to say the least, hasn't it, Matthew? Hasn't it?
It's been crazy, honestly. My brain is scrambled. Honestly, I will admit, I don't get thrown off too easily, but this whole name change issue in the live chat has thrown me off kilter tonight. It's been hard to keep up with who I'm looking at, who I'm talking to, or anything. So I beg you, YouTube, change it back. I say change it back. Come on, man.
Please, I beg of you, please let me on that. I gotta tell y'all, folks, it's been tough looking at the chat. I'm so sorry, everyone. I know that we have so many loyal viewers here with us tonight, and folks who are old guard and have been with us for years. And because YouTube changed the naming, I know some of y'all. I can see some of y'all, like Jason Curling, but y'all's names look so different. It's really hard to pick up on them instantly. It's tough, and so I completely empathize with Matthew's position. This is tough. YouTube, you've got to change this back. This is the dumbest thing that's been done recently. Like, it's making everyone's job so much more difficult. It's making the communities that people have built for years, like ours, incredibly difficult to decipher, because a lot of people that we've known for years under the same name just had their name changed overnight. It's ridiculous. So hopefully they'll change this back, because this has been one of the worst updates on YouTube that we've seen in 3.5 years. And generally, to be honest with y'all, whenever they change anything, I don't really think most of the time it's for the better. I just don't know why they don't keep things the way they are, because that would just be a lot better, in my opinion. But anyways, with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the next part of our news, which is also wildly massive. And I'm about to drop on y'all a bombshell, in a literal sense, on what China and India are doing with Russia. And it's not good at all. But before we get into all of that, I do want to give a huge shout out to the 13.3 thousand people who have been here with us tonight and have been enjoying the stream, and about the 45,000 people who have watched the stream within the first hour. We are always honored to be able to tell the news to each and every single one of y'all every day, and we are happy to know that y'all are here once again and watching tonight. If y'all would like to, please subscribe. We do this thing every single day, every single night, except for here on the 27th and the 31st. We won't be able to do anything, actually. We won't be able to make streams or videos because we're going to be moving headquarters. So we will be on the road every single one of those days, and so unfortunately we will not be able to run then. But beyond that interruption that's coming up here in the near future, we run these streams 6 days a week, every day but Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and we also make short war videos as much as we can. So please make sure, folks, to subscribe, because y'all will always be getting the news from the Enforcer channel if you do. And so with that, we are going to be moving into a couple of questions for a brief intermission before we move on into the rest of our news for the night. And so Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first 3 super chats of the night. Our first one here goes to none other than Joe in the Box, 3453, and thank you very much, Joe in the Box, for that massive $200 support, the largest super chat of the night. And a big thank you, good sir, for helping to keep the channel running with that massive support right there. That is humongous. And Joe said, just my coffee donation for the week, and enjoy a cup on me, guys, and thanks for the great work.
Hey, and thank you for the unbelievable support and helping this channel to keep on running, Joe in the Box, because folks like you help to make this channel possible and help us to drink our coffee and, most importantly, eat the Costco chicken. Oh, The Costco chicken, the best chicken on the planet. Juicy. It's great. It's a wonderful chicken. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling, Joe in the Box, because you help us to stay caffeinated so that we can keep up this great work. Some of y'all might not know this, but I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I've been packing all day long. And we've been running around the world, it feels like today before the show, even trying to get everything packed up and ready to move. And hopefully I don't sound like that at all because I had my cup of Joe. So hopefully I haven't sounded like that at all through the stream. Andy, have I sounded like that? Have I sounded tired?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I haven't sounded tired. That's coming from Enforcer Matt, the co-host. I'm not tired. I'm not tired. He's not biased either. You're not biased, are you, Matthew?
No, trust me, I would tell you if you sounded bad. I would tell you.
Oh, good. Thank you. Wait a minute. What do you mean by anyways? But anyways, I gotta say, folks, I gotta thank you so much, all of y'all, for enjoying this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Because all of y'all do, every single one of y'all, and Joe in the Box, you especially are, with unbelievably massive support like that tonight. And so with that, a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope we addressed that the best we possibly could. And with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so our second one here, our second super chat, is going to go to none other than Bradley Barrows. And Bradley just threw in a $100 support, and a huge shout to you, good sir, for that support. And also, Bradley has the luxury of still having his name. Congratulations to you, Bradley, for that, because I had to go change my name, and somebody out there has already taken the handle at Enforcer Matt. So someone out there has my name. So I had to become It's Enforcer Matt, because, you know, it's the Enforcer, it's Enforcer Matt. That's what we do around here. But thank you very much, Bradley, for that massive $100 support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the massive support, Bradley Barrows, because you didn't throw in a comment, but the support is unbelievably massive and helps us to keep this channel running every day. And I gotta say, a humongous thanks to you. You didn't throw in a comment, but folks like you help us to make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing running. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, before we move on to the last one, I saw some people in the chat say, man, the Enforcer sounds wired. Some people said he might have gotten some snow, and we're not talking about the kind that closes schools from snow days. And I'll tell you folks really quickly, here's how I usually do this on YouTube. I am like legitimately exhausted right now. If I talked how I really felt, I wouldn't sound good. So what I do every single night is I just hype myself up and I just force energy into it. Like generally I talk like this off air anyways. I always talk like this because how I think of it, how I personally think of it, it's really boring to listen to someone who sounds like they're tired every day. So I like to sound like I'm energized because it makes it more interesting for people to listen to. So no, it's nothing to do with that. It's just that I get some coffee, I get enough energy to really put it all into the show, and then we put it all into the show, and hopefully it comes out well. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, folks, it's time for us to move on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news for the night.
All right, so our last super chat of the segment is going to go to Ross Nib. And thank you very much, Ross, for that generous $80 support right there. And we do appreciate it very, very much. And Ross said, hey, fellas, and I love to see the B1s fly again. And I changed my handle easy enough. And thanks for the heads up about the YouTube change, or about that change by YouTube. And also, notice the donation amounts are preset. For example, he can send $30.99, $79.99, but not like $50. Weird. Honestly, that's weird. I haven't really checked because I don't actually look at the super chat box very much, but I'll have to check and see if they've changed that too. Honestly, like here's my philosophy: you don't want to change stuff too much if it's not broken, and nothing was broken before. So I don't understand why YouTube wants to do this. I think it's just like a desire in the corporate world to keep things progressing. But the problem is though, just making changes for the hell of it, and especially changes like this in the chat that are really counterproductive. I don't understand that. I hope and pray, like seriously, I hope and pray they change that back because this is no good. I think they got backlash last time they did this, and they had to revert it last time as well. So hopefully they listen to the people and change it back. But Enforcer, what say you?
I just have to tell y'all, I pray that they listen because Enforcer Official, that like it was good for a handle, but I don't want to be Enforcer Official in the chat whenever we type anything. Like look at that, folks. Look at the banner in the live chat at Enforcer Official. Like, that's not even us. We're the enforcer. Like, that's what we are. And like, literally forever, when we get on a stream, I'm like, hello, I am the enforcer. This is Enforcer Matt. So now it's it's Enforcer Matt in the chat, and then it's Enforcer Official. That's not even who we are. Like, it's like that. Like, that's, it annoys me to no end, folks. It really does. So hopefully they do change that back, because I don't like this much, and they did try this before and they reverted it. So hopefully they revert this one really quickly, because I'm not a big fan of this at all. So with that, a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And also, by the way, I gotta say that is weird. I think what it's doing, though, Ross, if I understand correctly, is that it's giving you the conversion in your amount of dollars to US dollars. So what it's doing is it's saying that $79.99, I think that's equivalent to about 50 USD. And let me change that. Let me check that USD to Australian dollar. And so let's put in 50. And that is actually really close to being a $50 amount. So that actually seems to be what they're doing. And then let me put in the 30 one that you said. The 31. Let me go check that. Let me go see. Let me get the exact number. It's $30.99. So if we put in $30.99, that's about a $20 super chat. So it actually looks like what they're doing, at least with those presets, is that they're converting your dollar amount to be as close as possible to a specific dollar amount in the United States. So like $50 or $20 or something like that. A little bit weird. I never knew that they did that for foreign audiences using foreign currencies that are not US dollars. But that is actually quite interesting. I actually didn't know that until you just brought that up right then. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible, who help us to keep this thing rolling. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make this thing possible for years. And also, seeing the B1s flying is really cool, because there aren't a lot of B1s. I think there's actually a smaller amount of B1 Lancers in service right now. There was 104 of them built. How many are operational today? As of 2025, they operate 45 of these. So actually, they have as many B1 Lancers as they have of B-52s right now. I was actually about to say these are somewhat rare. Apparently not. But the B1 Lancers are incredibly cool as a design and a concept. And also, if y'all know, folks, why it was originally designed with the sweeping wings, it was actually a really neat idea. The idea was that they would fly supersonic towards their target, and once they believed they were within radar range, they would extend the wings out, so that way they would get better low-altitude performance at subsonic speeds, and then they would dip down pretty much to skimming the trees and fly at tree skimming level all the way to their target, trying to avoid enemy radars. It was a really neat concept at the time. Of course, nowadays, because of guided missiles, that's pretty much pointless. We don't have to conduct dumb bombing runs like that anymore to where that would be needed, so it pretty much ends up being a missile bus like the B-52 is as well. So pretty neat sort of an aircraft, though. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the next piece of the news. Matthew, on that soundboard, do you have anything that's like a funeral march or anything like that?
But sadly not. But I tell you what, man, we're waiting for that Ukraine news, I tell you.
Man, we're waiting for it, and we're getting into it. And we're going to be getting on into the news inside of Russia, because it's been bad today. It's been terrible today, folks. It's been absolutely terrible. Moving us on into Moscow, we were able to hear that the Russians have been going irate. According to the Russian president, which is Vladimir Putin, it appears that the Russian-U.S. summit will be postponed. I didn't know about that. That's shocking to me. He's the first to tell us. Have y'all heard about that? Have y'all heard about the whole thing being postponed? I hadn't. I hadn't until right now. We also heard that Budapest was suggested by the American side during a telephone conversation. It would be a mistake to approach the summit without preparation, which pretty much means that you have to accept their demands outright before you even get to negotiation. That's what that's code for. The U.S. is trying to put pressure on Russia with new sanctions, but no self-respecting country does anything under pressure. What the hell is he talking about? Everyone does everything under pressure. This is that stupidity that Putin usually exudes in very large amounts, is a country doesn't do anything under pressure. When has anyone done something that's not under pressure? I mean, hell, didn't we come to the conclusion of the Cuban Missile Crisis with the U.S. and the Soviet Union threatening to kill everyone in each of the other's countries? And then that's when we came to a conclusion. Were we supposed to just be a self-respecting country and kill everyone because we don't work under pressure? What type of like like, this is the stuff, folks, that boomers say about, like, Gen Z kids, is that they don't know how to operate under pressure. I guess Putin's a Gen Z kid because he can't operate under any sort of pressure, and everything has to be perfectly fine. But anyways, he spoke to Trump about the impact of the situation with Russian oil supplies around the world on prices, including the United States, which is practically nil, because the Russian, like the Russians don't even affect our markets. We don't even buy from them. So the price will hardly go up at all. And if anything, we'll just offset it with Western production, especially here in the United States. Russia's response to potential strikes with Tomahawk cruise missiles on Russian territory would be serious, if not overwhelming. Oh, scary. Very scary. So pretty much, once again, threatening some sort of an insinuated war if we give the Ukrainians Tomahawks. We also saw that was reiterated again in another post as a direct quote from Putin, which was a direct quote from Putin. We also have been able to hear that the Kremlin is now threatening retaliatory sanctions. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, threatened retaliation for the EU sanctions. The response will be adequate and will take into account Moscow's interests, basically meaning nothing. Russia has almost no ability to hurt anyone in any way at all around the world, especially economically. Have y'all seen Russia's export partners? Let me show y'all that. Let me show y'all that. This is Russia's export partners in 2017. So this is way before anyone got involved in, say what they're doing right now, which is the war in Ukraine. This is way before that. So this is what it actually looks like before. Their number one partner is China. And how much do they export? $39 billion. $39 billion. That's it. That's it. Let me go show you all the list of largest trading partners of Germany. Let me go show you all that, even. Look at this. The list of largest trading partners in terms of exports by Germany. America at $157 billion. So if we sat here and talked about this, Germany sanctioning the United States would have, hell, it would actually have a 1,000% greater impact on the United States than Russia sanctioning us. Or better yet, for that matter, if Germany gets sanctioned by Russia, they're losing, at least by 2017 figures, and this isn't even representative of the modern day, about $19 billion of trade. They don't even trade with the Russians anymore in Germany. So retaliatory sanctions on what? Nobody hardly even traded with them in the first place, and the whole deal with China of the exports, it's literally just crude. That's all China bought from them then, and that's all that China buys from them now. Russia is useless, except for being an extraction power. They only extract oils and other raw materials and then just export them. It's next to nothing. It's literally pennies in the foreign trade scenario. I mean, hell, look at this. This is insane. The United States was Russia's 5th largest trading partner at $15 billion. $15 billion in a year. In one whole year. Like, look at this. No one in the top 10 for Germany even gets near to $15 billion. Let me go show you all the list of the U.S.'s largest trading partners, because this whole threat of the sanctions, this is just stupid. Look at this. Our largest trading partner, if we just consider a bulk entity, is the European Union. We have a total export volume to the EU of $370 billion. Russia on our list is number 30. At least in the last year, this is 2024, we only traded about $500 million worth of goods with them. And that was, of course, things that are not sanctioned, like uranium and such. But only $500 million. I mean, hell, we trade as little with Saudi Arabia as Russia is able to export at full volume in 2017 to the United States. They are an economic power that is a joke. I mean, this is what a regional power or a less than regional power is able to pull out economically in its abilities. Russia threatening to conduct some sort of retaliatory action to sanctions is ridiculous. They don't even have an ability economically to do anything to anyone, much less themselves. I mean, they're broke and poor at this point. Anyways, we also were able to hear that Medvedev had to weigh in. We all know that Medvedev had to weigh in, so let me get y'all Medvedev's weighing in. So Medvedev stated that Trump's actions towards Moscow amount to an act of war. Look at him. He doesn't look happy.
Look at that man. Look at him. Look at him.
Look at him!
Can you imagine that the last time the U.S. President Putin got together, Putin was over there being all cheeky and stuff at the very end of the little meeting they had at the little joint press conference. Putin said, maybe next time in Moscow. It's like, I don't think they're going to Moscow anymore. I don't think so. I did see, though, the U.S. president was making some wild statements today against Putin, saying that we'll see how Russia's doing in 6 months after these sanctions hit them. So it looks like that little relationship went sideways. But, it's toxic, though. It's a toxic relationship. It might turn around tomorrow, and they might be back enmeshed with one another. You never can tell. But at least for right now, these group of thugs, including Medvedev right here, are in deep trouble when it comes to sanctions.
Oh, yeah, and we got to get the whole statement from Medvedev, folks. He made a whole rant. And, of course, got to give a big shout out to Preston Stewart, who's a friend of the channel, who actually put this out on Twitter today. So I'm going to read you all the full quote as Preston Stewart reposted it. The U.S., this is, by the way, from Dmitry Medvedev. The USA is our enemy, and their talkative peacemaker has now fully taken up the path of war with Russia. Yes, he does not always actively fight on the side of the Bandera Kiev yet, but this is now his conflict, not the senile Biden's. His words, not ours. Of course, they will say that he could not do otherwise, that he was pressured in Congress, etc. This does not change the main thing. The decisions made are an act of war against Russia. Now, Trump has fully aligned himself with the insane Europe. His words, not ours. Dmitry Medvedev at the end there. Dmitry Medvedev. So this was Medvedev's rant in response to the sanctions that were implemented against Russia. So it appears he's not happy with them. And it sounds like he's going to have to be unhappy with them for some time, at least from what we know. The president did say that in response from a reporter saying that Putin stated that the sanctions won't even affect him, the president responded, let's see in 6 months how he's still dealing with that one. And so it seems like there's a plan to keep these on him for a while now, and they might not be coming off, but still, I gotta be honest with y'all, listening to Medvedev for any sort of an actual position on Russia is like listening to the local crackhead. Like, it's pretty much just ramblings. It has really no actual position of the Russian government involved in it. And while he's a advisor to Putin, he just comes out and says the craziest stuff all the time. So listening to him and hearing him say it's an act of war, it's the smallest statement of an act of war that could be made, because everything to Medvedev is an act of war. If the wind moves a tree off in the distance, that's an act of war against Russia. So this, of course, is showing the Russians are not happy. We can take that out at least. But are the Russians going to be going to war with NATO right now? No, that's probably not going to be happening. High unlikelihood.
It's really wild because the last time Medvedev ran his mouth, the U.S. president at least publicly acknowledged they were sending nuclear subs to the coast of Russia over Medvedev's statements. Like, it was solely for that reason they sent them there, or that was at least the public the view of it, is they were sending them there for that reason. So Medvedev, not only did he not back off, but yet he keeps on making these wild statements over and over and over. So I guess the U.S. is being shown how crazy these people truly are at this point. Hopefully they realize how crazy they are. I hope, because if Medvedev's still making wild statements after nuclear subs were sent to his coast, then obviously the guy's off his rocker.
Honestly, man, in the words of one of our wise senators in the U.S. Congress, if you need foreign policy to fail, call a crackhead. Because, man, I'm telling you, it's like the statements from Medvedev, folks, are legitimately like insano. Like, all of that he said right there, it's going to amount to nothing. I can promise you all that. He has said so many crazy statements like that through the war, and it always like. Medvedev is a litmus test. If he tells you that he's going to kill you and your whole family in the middle of the night, that really just means he's unhappy with you, and that's it. Like, it doesn't mean anything else beyond that. You can't even really read into it as, like, a literal threat, like this whole yada-yada act of war deal. This is not an act of war. Like, the Russians, of course, are going to be hurt by this badly, and they're already considering a war with NATO, but they're not going to war because Medvedev said something. He said a lot through the war, and it never turns into anything. So, don't worry. This isn't going to be a war overnight just because Medvedev said so. It's never been. But you gotta make sure, folks, that you be a little bit careful and pay attention to this whole thing, because while they won't go to war over what Medvedev is saying, we do know that they're gearing up for war with NATO. So no matter what he's saying, which he's been saying that the whole war, there's still an imminent threat to the West. So we do have to make sure to pay attention to that and keep that in mind. Still, a lot of people are talking about this whole act of war deal that Medvedev is yapping on about today, and also all the other comments from multiple other officials in the Russian government and what they're thinking of it. And Matthew, what are people really thinking about what the Russians are thinking, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we do see that the Russian officials are reacting terribly to the sanctions, and also today Putin is making wild statements himself, and he came out bebopping and making a statement that was quite wild about the sanctions, and now Medvedev's calling it an act of war, or at least along those lines. So what is Russia really thinking about this? 59% said Russia is panicking and scared, while 30% said Russia is furious and angry, and 7% said Russia is confused and lost. And technically, all of them could be true, but which is the main one? What is Russia truly thinking right now if you cut through all the propaganda? And I would say Russia is furious and angry because they knew this was coming eventually. I think they knew it was coming, and that's why they sort of prepared this whole nuclear test and all this other stuff. They kind of knew it was coming down the pipeline. So now Russia is shifting over to basically getting revenge. That's what they're going to be going for now. So Russia is furious and angry. Underneath that persona that Putin tries to put on, he is extremely livid because his economy is struggling, and now it's going to be put down even further down the toilet, and there's really nothing he can do about it except for sit back and hope that he doesn't get ousted. So I'm with the 30%. I think he's really, really angry. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say I would be with the 59%. I think he actually might be scared and panicking because he's clearly angry, but at the same time, if you're angry, but also someone else holds all of the cards, which we do, that's not a good look. And also, by the way, folks, I got to add this in, speaking of the poll, because this is kind of like an engine of our news right now. It's not looking good for Russia in any way. Let me get y'all some of the news that we had on Twitter today, including the fact that we've been able to hear that Chinese state oil companies have suspended purchases of seaborne Russian oil, reported by Reuters. This comes after the USA placed Lukoil and Rosneft on the sanctions list. So it actually does appear that China, at least to some extent today, is adhering to the new sanctions. That's freezing Russia's largest oil market. That's going to start killing it off. And if Russia is not getting money from China and India, they're getting money from practically nowhere. China and India make up, I believe it's something like 85% of all of their oil exports in the current day. So if China is starting to close off their oil markets to Russian imports, Russia is losing at least 40% of the market share that they're currently fighting in right now, which is in the Chinese and Indian markets. Even still, we have also been able to hear that from this statement directly from Reuters. Chinese state oil majors have suspended purchases of seaborne Russian oil after the United States imposed sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, Moscow's two biggest oil companies, multiple trade sources stated on Thursday. The move comes as refiners in India, the largest buyer of seaborne Russian oil, are set to sharply cut their crude imports from Moscow to comply with the U.S. sanctions imposed over the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine. This is also confirming that India as well is also starting to shrink their market for Russian oil and may completely depart from it because of the sanctions. This could end up destroying Russia because right now their economy is dying because they're not able to sell gas or oil to the Europeans. They still have been able to, throughout the whole war, to at least salvage 2/3 of their market, which is India and China, without Europe being included. So their market has shrunk throughout most of the war by about a third, or 33%. Now they're about to lose the other 66%. So if the Russian economy is looking bad, just losing a third of the market share they were already involved in beforehand, imagine what it's going to look like when they lose the whole damn market share when the Chinese and the Indians leave the market and stop buying Russian oil. That is not going to look good. Russia literally is going to go broke. There is going to be no money even coming in Russia in any way at that point. And also, if this is the case today, and if this persists through weeks, and we see no change in the purchase orders from China and India, and they continue to shrink in volume, this means that while China has been providing some weapons to Russia, they aren't that dedicated to the Russians, and neither is India either, if U.S. sanctions are enough in themselves to just sway China and India away from purchasing Russian oil. So Russia is truly on their own if this ends up remaining the case for several weeks of time. But I would have to say that I would be a larger part of the poll because of that. I would assume that Putin is scared. Without any economic lifelines by China and India, they might not even be able to survive another year and a half, like we've been saying. They might economically collapse in less than a year from now. But moving on from that, the Ukrainians have been adding in their 2 bits to make sure that the Russians will collapse a little bit sooner than a year and a half from now, including another strike on the Ryazan refinery. Proof of that here in this clip, where we can see another large fire breaking out in the area of the refinery.
It's like they got a daytime sunlight out here with this fire going off. It's really quite wild.
Man, it is quite wild. And we also got to see the damage that was caused in the town of Kupeysk, right outside of Chelyabinsk, from that attack yesterday. The longest range attack. That's the damage. Oh, whoa, that's a lot of damage. And it does appear that we were able to geolocate that as well. There's the opening of that shed and that roof and that one with the purple line in the background, and there's the shed and that one with the roof and the purple one in the background. So that's a lot of damage. I don't think Flex Shield can fix that one. Oh, but anyways, moving on from that now to Chelyabinsk, we have also been able to hear that the Russians have tried their best to piss us off here in the West today. For one, Britain did have to intercept a Russian ship that was getting closer to their coast today, as we heard that the British Royal Navy, for the first time under NATO orders, intercepted a Russian warship near its shores. The Royal Navy destroyer HMS Duncan carried out an operation to intercept and escort the Russian anti-submarine ship Vice Admiral Kulikov off the UK coast in the North Sea. This marks the first time a British warship has acted directly under NATO command. The operation also involves a Royal Navy Wildcat helicopter, the French Navy, and a Dutch NH-90 helicopter. The interception took place from October 17th to 19th, with HMS Duncan escorting the Russian vessel from the North Sea through the English Channel to the area near the Ile d'Ossons, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I know I'm not. We also were able to hear that Russia had violated Lithuanian airspace today. So I guess you could say it's getting a little lit in Lithuania. We were able to hear that according to Lithuanian authorities, the incident occurred near the town of Kybartai on the border of the Russian Kaliningrad region. A Russian Su-30 fighter jet and an Il-78 refueling aircraft violated Lithuania's airspace, penetrating about 700 meters into the country and staying for roughly 18 seconds before leaving. In response, 2 Spanish Eurofighter Typhoon jets from NATO's air policing mission were immediately scrambled. This is a blatant violation of Lithuania's territorial integrity, said the president of Lithuania. Russian embassy officials will be summoned to receive a formal protest. So it does appear that the Russians are once again trying to piss off NATO states, and I have to say, folks, we ought to go the Turkish route. Shoot them down. Teach them a lesson. They won't fly into our airspace. Either we're going to get into a major war, which is deserved because they need to stop flying through our airspace, or they won't fly through our airspace again because their aircraft are going to get shot down. That ought to be the simple answer to this. No airspace violations even for 18 seconds. 1 second of an airspace violation will lead to Russian aircraft being shot down. And that should be the policy from this point forward, and that should be followed to the letter, even if it seems to be wildly escalatory. That needs to be our answer. Because these diplomatically worded letters of protest don't seem to be getting us anywhere. We ought to shoot them down, and then the Russians can sit there and talk about, oh, this is a great escalation, and we'll go, okay, fly one through again and see what happens. And then we'll shoot it down again for a good laugh. But anyways, moving on from that, we also have been able to hear inside of France that major military officials, including France's top general, General Fabien Mendon, has warned lawmakers that the French armed forces must be ready within 3 to 4 years for a potential shock or test from Russia, marking one of the starkest assessments yet from Paris. The Russians are reorganizing with one goal in mind, to confront NATO, according to Mendon, adding that hybrid attacks already underway could soon turn more violent. His remarks align with growing warnings across Europe from Germany, Poland, and the Baltic states that Moscow may directly test NATO defenses before 2030. France's tone has hardened in recent months, with President Macron declaring that Europe is now in a confrontation with Russia. General Mendon stressed that Europe must prepare collectively, saying rearmament itself is a form of deterrence. If our rivals perceive that we are making this effort, they may renounce. If they feel we are unprepared, I don't see what could stop them, according to Mondon. So it does appear that the French are continuously preparing for a war with the Russian Federation, because at this point, it doesn't really seem like anything is going to be staving that away, at least inside of Europe for now. We have also been able to hear in the Middle East that the Israelis are continuing to conduct airstrikes against Hezbollah forces in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley region, which we saw here. That's quite a lot of airstrikes.
I'll tell you what, it's like they can't go a day without a strike. I'm telling you.
Man, I tell you, man, like, it's a crazy thing how that works, and also we were able to hear that, that according to the Israelis, Hamas must lay down its arms. We will not compromise on that, and it's at the core of the peace plan by the President of the United States. At the moment, we understand that Hamas isn't necessarily laying down their arms at all, for that matter, which is a violation of the ceasefire, and it seems like the Israelis are about to invade them again. But the United States of America came in today and made a retort to the Israelis. I don't know if this is the whole deal, like a response to the whole deal about Israel isn't a protectorate of the United States, but the President of the United States made the following statement. If Israel annexes the West Bank, it would lose all of its support from the United States. Direct quote from the President.
That's a wild quote right there. Honestly, that's very wild. Honestly, I was not expecting to hear that. To be straight up, this is the first time I'm hearing this. I mean, you're telling it to me for the first time. I mean, I'm shocked. Like, seriously.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, folks, that's what happens when you say a little bit of a comment against the United States, like you're not a protectorate. Now, I got to say, don't know why in the world the VP kind of co-signed that statement, because, one, I don't even know why it was made. No one was even saying that they were a protectorate of the United States or even insinuating that. So why go of your way to try and create an insult when there isn't one to even be perceived? So, secondly, I also got to say, I don't know why in the world the VP co-signed on that. But one thing I also will say is that I do like the response that the Israelis are generally on a leash, and that if they do something stupid, they'll just lose all of their support. Because I don't really like offensive comments being made to the United States for no due cause or good reason, or for any reason for that matter, even if there is a good reason. And so I like to see that there is a response to this that seems to be fairly balanced. I would actually have to say, folks, some people always think that they have a political bias at the end of the day. I agree with things when they're good calls, and I disagree with them when they're bad calls. I generally like that this is the statement that was made today, because not for the reason that we're trying to go after the Israelis, but for the reason that if the Israelis want to make it clear that they're going to put insult directly to us as citizens of the Republic and the nation itself, and go out of their way to tell us that they aren't our dogs, which no one was even saying about them, then you will get comments like that from the President of the United States. So, you mess around, and that's the response from the U.S., is that you can just be left high and dry, and we'll see how you go from there. So anyways, with that, folks, quite an interesting development. Who saw that one coming? I don't know. Matthew, did you see that one coming?
I didn't see that one coming. Honestly, I didn't see that coming. Honestly, it sounds like it's about the West Bank thing, the whole West Bank Gaza situation, because it sounds to me like the U.S. is not willing to accept that Israel really doesn't want the ceasefire. My personal opinion is if Israel doesn't want the ceasefire and if Gazans don't want the ceasefire, then let them fight. That's my motto. But the U.S. is so hell-bent on making sure the ceasefire works, they are apparently willing to pull all support from Israel if they can't get the ceasefire to be forced through. So me personally, I mean, that's one approach to it. I personally wouldn't do that. I'd personally just step back and let it happen, basically. But I guess the U.S. really wants this victory, so they're going to push it through at all costs.
Yeah, I would have to say, apparently, and it is absolutely wild, folks. I cannot really believe that statement. I would agree with it, but quite an interesting statement nonetheless. Also, to let y'all know, the situation with the Gaza Strip doesn't really pertain to this. This actually pertains to the West Bank, which is this area over here on the eastern side of Israel. This larger area is what's called the West Bank.
Is that a separate ceasefire agreement, though, or is it the same thing? I thought it was along the same lines.
It's separate because Hamas only exists in the Gaza Strip, so the ceasefire only exists for Hamas within the Gaza Strip because Hamas doesn't have an operational armed wing in the West Bank. So generally what's going on with the whole West Bank deal And this is a very convoluted one, but it has to do with the Israeli settler deal. If you know about that, Matthew, where like Israelis just move into the West Bank, kick the Palestinians out, and they just set up camp there and live there. It has something to do kind of with that because it causes a great deal of tensions. Obviously, the Palestinians respond, and then the Israeli military rolls in and then pretty much unofficially annexes some areas of the West Bank, which is generally how it's been going for a while now. So apparently now we're saying that if they keep doing that, we just drop all support for them and they're left high and dry. So interesting. Didn't expect that one. So with that in mind, I hope that does address that development well for all of y'all. And once again, folks, I gotta say, I do appreciate comments like this because I don't really like it when people go out of their way to diss on America and then they expect that there's no response. I think that a response is always appropriate, and this seems to be a response to yesterday's statements about them not being a protectorate of the United States, which honestly was a really stupid statement. Anyways, moving on from that and on into the Ukraine war, we have some news that came out of Ukraine today. We didn't have a huge amount of combat footage, but we do have a really interesting, lengthy clip that came out of the area of the Seversk battlefield today. But moving first into our location unknowns, we were able to see Russian soldiers watching the pit of all abominations on this planet burn. Take a look at this.
Уебало нас.
Уебало нас.
Рэп спас. Трохи, чуть-чуть.
That burns quite well, actually.
Like
Давай,
kindling.
уебаем ее.
Oh, he's
Probably
freaking
built
out.
in pyrotechnics, too.
Уебаем. Да, седьмого бросить.
This is what happens when Scooby-Doo and the gang fall on hard times.
Вашу мамашу.
He hides behind another burnout vehicle.
Рэп чуть-чуть спас. Так бы, может, серьезнее было.
Well, that's the end of that clip. But doesn't appear the Russians did well today. We also got to see the casualty report from the Russian Federation as well. And according to Ms. Disa, keeper of the record, 626 drones is the new highest daily loss. And over the past 24 hours, we have been able to confirm that 920 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 6 APCs, 106 supply trucks, 2 main battle tanks, 24 artillery pieces, 626 drones, 1 MLRS, 16 cruise missiles, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. So it was actually a pretty good day today. And moving us on down the front lines and into the area of the Seversk-Lyman frontline direction, we were able to see several drone attacks being conducted by the Signum unit while they blew our eardrums out. Here is one of the first clips from the Signum unit, showing them flying their drone into a largely destroyed building, but still occupied by Russian equipment and Russian personnel. So they're going to get on in there and they're going to fix that. Look at them, just flying it around so gentle. Getting it right where it needs to be, like a surgeon's scalpel, almost.
Look at that. So precise.
Oh, look, there's the Russian equipment. Well, get them, buddy. And they will. Right there. Well, that's an unfortunate deal for the Russians, I'd say. And also, speaking of which, they didn't have a good time on the Seversk front today. The 54th Mechanized Brigade taught them a lesson, to say the least, of what happened in the Seversk direction today. And we can see them flying on around, keeping an eye on those Russians as they walk down this street towards Seversk. Oh, and wow, that's a large group of them, on assault scooters, no less. Looks like one of them may have gotten hit back there. They're serpentining on the road, thinking that'll help them out.
Also, by the way, folks, I'm currently right now taking 30 seconds to send a message to YouTube to ask them to please revert this back out of the live chat. Like, genuinely, this is one right here I'm going to make a big stink about because this is ridiculous right here. I see so many people complaining in the chat. Like, this is the first thing YouTube's done that has generally gotten bad feedback from not only us on the creator side, but also on the user side as well. Like, it's really wild they've made that change.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, this is a ridiculous one. I don't like it, folks. I don't like it at all. I don't like seeing the @ symbol in front of everyone's names either, because it makes it a little bit harder to read everyone's name. But we can see here the Russians continuing to try and flee, or at least try and use their dirt bikes in a dirt field. But weirdly enough, the dirt bike didn't work in a dirt field, so this Russian now had to go on foot, and it appears that he paid dearly for going on foot. Usually they say walking's cheap, not in Ukraine, at least if you're a Russian soldier. You know what I say about using aims and their proclivities. Let 1,000 blossoms bloom. But I'm not going to spend another minute on it because another crappy YouTube update came out and it's terrible. But anyways, oh man, I'm telling you. Oh man, I'm telling you. Oh man, I get no respect around here. I try and run a YouTube channel and then they change all the usernames. Oh man, I'm telling you. Oh man, I'm telling you. We get no respect around here. You say you watch a Russian attack. Oh man, and then they get blown away. Oh man, I'm telling you. But, oh man, nevertheless, the Russians do appear to be getting hit pretty badly by the Ukrainians.
They're getting smashed, like just smashed.
Man, they're getting smashed? Ayo, no diddy. Man.
Oh, look at them. Look at them. They're going off the beaten path now. Oh, man.
Oh, man.
What the hell? This thing's taking a lot of hits.
Dang.
Man, this thing's getting pounded and it just keeps going.
Ivan and his boys were up there on their tiny tank, and they were getting pounded. Man.
He was going through his defense, and he was overwhelmed by his girth and tonnage.
Oh, my God.
Hopefully y'all know that meme, by the way. Otherwise, I'm going to sound like a wacko. Hopefully that meme is known by a lot of people.
Yeah, I can't believe you referenced that on air. Man, I'm not gonna lie, man, sports commentators have a lot of ayo moments in the middle of their commentary. And the quarterback was tackled from the rear and his back was blown out by so-and-so who was, it's like, yo, it's like, what are you saying? It's like, what the hell? But anyways, we can continue to see the Russians getting attacked here and hit quite heavily. A lot of people know the meme, thankfully, man. A lot of people are like, yeah, I know the meme. Oh, thank the Lord.
I tell you what, I thought I was going to sit this one out, honestly.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah, look at how he threw that ball. He got it right in there. He's really good.
There's even worse ones. I can even, like, quote you some worse ones than that. Like, I'm not even sure if I want to say it, like, honestly. It's just, there's some worse ones, though, like sus ones.
Man, like that one time that one actor, you know, the one that's famous for slapping that guy in the face, he sat there and said, yeah, back in the day. Man, we used to say we were, you know, and I'm not even going to say it on air. I'm not going to say it on air, man, but that was bad. That was so bad.
And you see right here, these Russians are slamming these tanks right here in these Russian vehicles and busting right on them. It's crazy. Oh my God.
And quite so indeed. Quite so indeed. But moving on from that and further down the line, we also get to see more surrenders at Kutrivyar. Take a look at this, folks. Take a look at this.
Oh, look, a dog goes in the middle of the whole, like, little market.
Oh, actually, this is the evacuation of 10 civilians. Correction there, folks. I'm sorry, everyone. I was so exhausted, I misread the title earlier for this video. I was like, oh, well, they got more Russians that surrendered. No, this is actually the evacuation of civilians that have been stuck in the besieged town for a while. Which is a great thing to see. Look at that.
And they bring the dog, the coolers, and everything. You know, back in Philly, they had something like this. They used to call it bussing. You know, they said, oh, man, I'll tell you what. I'm glad they're getting out of there, though. It's good to see.
It is a great thing to see. And also, folks, luckily, a crisis has been averted. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has recovered from the blackout, and power has been restored, according to the Minister of Energy of Ukraine, and the power plant was not connected to the Russian grid. So the crisis was averted. The situation is normal at the power plant once more. So we are in the clear. There is going to be no major nuclear meltdown at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. It got very close to happening, and yet it did not. So, folks, with that high note right there, it is actually time for us to wrap up the news for the night. A little bit earlier than normal. This is actually what we used to round out the news around this time, but nowadays it usually goes on for about 2 hours in full length. But nevertheless, folks, it's time for us to move on into the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And, folks, I've got to say that it's a wonderful and amazing thing to know that y'all consider this channel to be your primary source of news. We're entirely honored, and thank you all so much once again for sticking with us through a whole other news segment to hear what's been going on around the world today. If you are new to the channel and you have enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe. If you are looking for unbiased news that does not get involved in domestic politics and stays entirely on top of pro-American and pro-Western prerogatives and perspectives, then this is your channel here. We run the stream every single day of the week. Every week. Hold up. Rewind on that segment. We're not running every single day of the week. We are going to be taking some time off, folks. Time off to move HQs. And that's coming up next week. Make sure to put this down in your calendars, everyone, because folks who suffer from enforcer withdrawals will unfortunately have to suffer for longer. Because the Enforcer channel is moving headquarters from Birmingham, Alabama to Salt Lake City! And hey, there we go, we got it. And because of that, unfortunately, folks, we are going to be off air for some time. So put this down in your calendar, folks, that the Enforcer channel will not be running shows or short war videos from the 27th of October to the 31st of October. We are also a little bit uncertain as to whether or not a live stream will be possible on the 1st of November. We are trying our hardest, however, to make sure that that will happen, and we will notify y'all if that is possible on the day of. Nevertheless, we will be moving headquarters all the way over to Salt Lake City, and we are hoping and expecting that things will be better at Salt Lake City than they are in Birmingham, Alabama. To give y'all a little bit of a taste of Bama, let me tell y'all of something that happened today. I'm not going to give any particular details that would dox our location, at least where we were today, but we had to get some things to prepare for this move. And so we went to a store and we had gotten our items and we were in line at the self-checkout. Someone had skipped the entire line and then went up to a self-checkout machine that wasn't even working. So the girl who was there as the self-checkout attendant said, excuse me, sir, that machine isn't working. And also, there's a line here if you'd like to join that line. And he said, well, why don't you fix your shit, mother effer? Oh, yeah, and then he just started rambling, like, violently as he walked off just into the wherever of the store. It wasn't even to a checkout. He just, like, wandered off into oblivion. And that was one of the things that we had to deal with today. And also, we had to deal with about 3 people who tried to T-bone us. I'm not even kidding. 3 people. And we maybe drove, like, less than 20 miles, and in less than 20 miles 3 people almost T-boned us, either coming out of exits or just whipping out in front of us with their car or something like that. So, you know, just give you a little bit of an idea of, like, and some people are, someone just said meth head. No, it was like a total, like believe it or not, that's like a totally normal person for Alabama. That's like 60% of the population in Alabama.
What,
is
being
like
meth
that.
head?
No, not a meth head, just violent like that. Like, that's just what, like, that's like a baseline emotional level for people in Alabama. And it's really crazy like that. You know, like, a lot of people always think of the South as Southern hospitality, and I would tell y'all that that does survive and persist in some places, but that is not the majority of the population of Alabama. A lot of people here, for some reason, are just really, really angry, like insanely angry like that, for no apparent reason. Like, they have a lot of things to be happy for in life, but they don't look at those. They just want to be angry. So that's not one of the main reasons that we're moving, is that, you know, we're just, well, we are tired of that. I can't even kid about that. We are tired of most people in the state being like that. But it's also due to the fact that Salt Lake City is a little bit cheaper, which makes it easier to be able to balance the budget sheet off of the show. So, you know, that's also another thing as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best that we can, just to give y'all, because when we got in the car, Matthew actually said this, and it made me think, I'm going to have to tell y'all about this tonight. Matthew was like, if we told viewers about this, they wouldn't even believe that that actually happened. Like, that just happens every time we get out. And I was like, you know what? I got to tell you all about that. Like, today in Alabama, like the Today in Alabama segment, this happened while we're out and about just doing normal stuff. It's crazy, honestly, you know?
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
And I don't know, like I see people asking the live chat, they're saying, well, why are they so angry? Honestly, I wish I had the answer to that question. I've been trying to figure it out for a long time. I put a lot of different like theories on it. I'm not really sure if there is one like theory. Like I'm not really sure why people are so angry. It's just it's weird. Like I know some people think, oh, you know, they're just discontent with the place they're living. They must just be tired of it, so they're bashing it. I legitimately want to find positive things about where I live because I don't want to bash where I'm from, because I've grown up here my entire life in Alabama. But one thing that's been almost consistent, and actually now that I think about it, it wasn't always like this. I remember when I was a lot younger, it felt like it was a bit different. Like maybe people were not so on edge, but it seems like in the last 10 or 15 years in Alabama, people have gone hyper political, hyper angry. I'm not sure really what it is, but it's just a lot of anger in this state. I'm not really sure why they've gotten that way, but I see some people saying Alabama here not that angry. I mean, me personally, I've been all over the state. People in Huntsville are generally more chill, but at the same time, though, it's only one small place in Alabama. But across the whole rest of the state, it needs some help. Like it really does need some help.
Well, and also, by the way, 60% of the state, like at least from my experience, 60% of the state is like that. And then the red, like 15% of it is generally folks who are like they're just really bad off, and then the remaining percentage is actually nice people. But the statistical percentage from my day-to-day experiences is that you just come up on people who are just like really really angry, and I don't know why. Because I'll tell you, like, Alabama doesn't really have a lot of bad things going for it. I mean, one, there's a lot of wilderness in the state and forest. It's not ugly looking. I mean, you know, it's fairly pretty, like if you look at it objectively. So, you know, we're living in a pretty decent looking landscape. There's a lot of forests around. And generally, while life is slower here, it is generally more peaceful than most other places. If you're not, you know, in the middle of an inner city where everyone's getting shot and killed every day, it's generally peaceful. So I don't really know why a lot of these people are just this angry. I just don't really get it. It's like, but one thing I will say that kind of is the issue, and this is the best way I can describe it. It's like this macho man-child thing that a lot of people have going on that's in that like 60% group I'm talking about that are just like really angry. They act like a lot of these people that I'm talking about, they act like to be like a upstanding gentleman or a lady of the state of Alabama. They have to be ultra violent or ultra angry all the time to really get it across that they're an upstanding citizen, which I really just don't understand. Because like they go out of their way to be openly aggressive to everyone, like that makes any sense as a way of life. So that's generally the best way I could explain it, because a lot of these people that I'm talking about here, and if you're from Alabama, you're definitely going to know who I'm talking about. They're the kind of people who love to inflict some sort of suffering on others. Like they'll go out of their way to, like, you know, sit there and power trip on you if you can. They talk this way, mother effer, you know, like they talk like that all the time. And also, they whenever anything bad happens to them, though, they want the sympathy of the whole damn planet, and they want everyone to know how they were wronged. But then they'll also wrong people just like that and then think nothing of it and think that it's well deserved. There's a lot of people like that here in Alabama. I'd say 60% of the population. There are great people in Alabama, though, don't get me wrong. I have plenty of friends who are here in Alabama, and they're amazing folks. But also a large part of the state's like that instead, and that's a really hard thing to have to come into contact with every day in the public, because it makes everything really unenjoyable, because you always have to be prepared to go up against some sort of an ultra violent, like roid raging man child to do anything here in the state, no matter what. And you know, like that, I'll generally leave it at that, at least on that deal. But that's our Today in Alabama segment, in case y'all are curious. But anyways, also, I know your redneck said Andrew still has the redneck in him. I mean, yeah, we grew up here. I mean, you know, but at the same time, it used to not really be like this, though. I mean, maybe I've kind of started to chalk it up. Maybe this is a Birmingham thing. Maybe it is, because people in Birmingham, if they're not like that, they also act like they're like the most important people in society, and they're like living royalty, and everything has to move around them, which also is just something I completely don't get either, because it's not really polite and it's not even decent. Like just speaking about civil decency, I don't even get that either. So I was like, maybe it's a Birmingham thing, because it didn't really seem like this existed until we came to Birmingham, because in most other places of the state, people are generally nice. So I don't know, I don't know, but still, beyond that, if you want to have a job or anything at all to do in Alabama, you have to live in Birmingham or Huntsville. So, with all the issues that it has here, it's like, might as well just pack up and move the HQ to Salt Lake City, because we do want to have a little bit of a life and something to do off air. And we really don't have much to do off air here in Birmingham, at least to put it that way, rather than just work and then sit around. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best that we can. And with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the question segment, which we've pretty much already been in, and we've answered no questions yet. And so we are going to be making sure to address the super chats first, and then the live chats after that. But of course, I've got to say, it's a wonderful thing that some of y'all have been around here. And I also see some people saying, let's see, I believe that's an American thing. Someone said it's definitely a Birmingham thing. Let's see, that's most big cities, honestly.
That's one thing. Yeah, that's one thing right there. If you wanna like curse a place, you call it Birmingham. Like that's one thing. I think was it the King of England that said that? He said one thing we have in common with America is that we both have Birmingham to speak of. It's like, I don't know if he was like taking a crap on Birmingham for saying that or what he was doing, but it's like, I've heard Birmingham in the UK. I think Richard Hammond grew up in Birmingham, actually, by the way. So it wasn't known as a great place even when he was growing up, because even they mocked it on the Grand Tour to a large degree. So it seems like our Birmingham's on par with theirs. Like, it seems like it's almost the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, Birmingham, England doesn't really have that good of a reputation either, or generally Brummies, which is what the folks from Birmingham are called in general. So I mean, hell, I guess we kind of like, we became the successor of Birmingham, England in Birmingham, Alabama, I suppose. But I see some people saying most of America is like that. And I would hope not, folks. I'd like to have some hope. I have a feeling y'all are probably right, but I'd like to have some hope, because I got to be honest with y'all. I have like a specific deal when I get out in public. Before we even ran this show or anything, I've always had the specific deal of treating people with civility and being polite and being generally a gentleman. Making sure, like, when people come across you, they're generally better for wear than worse for wear. That's usually how I think. That's usually how Matthew thinks. And to see people wander around with a completely different philosophy than that, it's something that just blows me away. And also on top of that, I would say it's very... If I had to chalk it up to something, I'd honestly say it's very un-American, because it's not a benefit to any citizenry, their actions or behaviors, and it's generally a detriment to society at large. That's my personal philosophy on that sort of a behavior that people put out, and I think that these people should be ostracized by society at large until they change their ways. That's generally what I would think, because usually social reinforcements are the only ways to correct those sorts of behavior, and I just don't know why a lot of people get away or get by with that behavior, not just in Alabama, but from what some people are saying around the whole country, and pretty much bring down the standard of living and people's happiness generally, just because they can. But anyways, with that, we are on to the questions. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so it's time to move on from our complaints about our current location. And we are moving shortly, though. We will not have to deal with it anymore. We will be moving starting on Monday, that is. So, also, by the way, folks, just to clarify this, we're going to be off the air as a short amount of time as possible. Like, we have compressed this thing so short, it's really a bit of a time crunch trying to get this done on time. But from Monday to Friday, that is our crunch time right there. And beyond that, we hope to be back on the air after that little short span. It's only about 4 to 5 days actually off the air, so that's pretty light considering we're doing an entire cross-country move. That's not too bad right there, and we've tried to make that as short as possible. So maybe we'll be up even sooner than that. There's no telling, but we'll have to wait and see. But moving into our first super chat here, this one goes to none other than Hokey Redneck, who puts in a $100 support, and thank you very much, Hokey, for that massive support right there. He said, "Why the F have people's names changed?" And honestly, Hokie, at first I thought it was a glitch, but now I'm starting to think that maybe it's some type of permanent YouTube change. Whatever it is, though, I have messaged YouTube officially using our Twitter page, and they did respond and ask for some more information about it. So I'm going to express our discontent with this because I really do not like it, and it looks like a lot of people do not like this, and hopefully they will change it back and listen to the folks. But thank you very much, Hokie. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the massive support, Hokie Redneck, and I gotta say I am 100% against the name change, not only for our channel, but for everyone else. It's really hard to read the chat at this point, me personally, and even understand who is who, because the names have almost entirely changed in their presentation. I don't like that much. And I also don't like the fact that there's no spaces anymore in anyone's names. So Quantum Fighter isn't Quantum Fighter, he's just Quantum Fighter. Like, it's like, I don't like that. Like, I don't like that. It's completely removed the form even from the names. Like, you have to sit there and think in your head, like, and that doesn't sound like a lot, folks, you know, for a lot of people, but when you're running the show and then you look over the chat and you're quickly trying to read off someone's chat, you got to sit there and mentally separate the words that are now all one mega word to sit there and say their name. And that's just infuriating. It's made the whole system a lot more difficult. So I would have to say, I'm not a fan of this at all. I thank you for the massive support as well, Hokie Redneck, and saying that as well. I don't think anyone's a fan of this, and hopefully we'll see that the YouTube changes us back here in the near future. I would hope. So with that, I hope that has addressed that the best we can, and a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who have been around forever, that are old guards and channel legends, that help this channel to keep on rolling and running every day. And so a humongous thanks to you once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I see some people saying, oh my God, a move across country like that with that many moving parts stresses me out just thinking about it. Honestly, like it has been slightly stressful, I will admit, but we have generally gotten most of the legwork done for it. Honestly, the easiest part's going to be driving out there and moving our whole operation out there. That's going to be the easiest part, actually, which is kind of tells you how much stuff's been going on in the background. So it's an undertaking and a half to get this done. There's a lot of stuff that we have to do on the business side to get that working. And also there's a lot of stuff happening on just the personal side to get stuff worked out with that. So it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff right there. And we've got a very, very nice schedule going on to get that done as soon as possible. So very interesting indeed. But moving on to our next super chat right here. This one goes to Bobby, also known as LC39A. Hey! And thank you very much, good sir, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate that. He said, what's happening? What's happening?
What's happening? A lot happened today, and I got to thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help us to keep this thing rolling, help to make this channel possible. And I got to thank you incredibly, Bobby, because you help us to be on air, and you help us to be able to cover this news every day, so that way we can say what's happening. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, folks, we are going to be moving on into the next one.
All right, so our next one goes to Hokie Redneck yet again, and he puts in a 50 this time. And thank you, Hokie, for the second support. He said, do you believe that they really have 5,000 working Russian missiles down there in Venezuela?
Oh, no, absolutely not. They probably have no missiles from the Russians in Venezuela. From the Soviets, maybe, but not from the Russians, that's for sure. Oh, wait a minute, 5,000 missiles? Is that what he said?
Yes.
Oh, he's talking about the man-pads. Yeah, they do have those. I mean, those are cheap and numerous. I thought you meant like intercontinental ballistic missiles. It's like, absolutely not. They definitely don't have 5,000 of them, because Russia doesn't even have 5,000 operational ones generally. So the Venezuelans certainly do not have 5,000 missiles. They have 5,000 man-pads, which are man-portable air defense systems. That they do have. And that is quite easy for them to obtain. And so with that, I hope that has addressed that well, at least the best that we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. Also, by the way, I see TS Actual said in the live chat, he said, also, enforcers, remember to roll with the punches, don't let it stress you out. Honestly, TS, like my level of stress tolerance these days has gone up dramatically. I'll be honest with you. If you would have asked me about 3 or 4 years ago, could I manage all the stuff at once? I'd probably say, oh my God, probably not. But now it's like, okay, this is just another thing. Like, it's really weird. It seems like over time, as our channel's grown, we've taken on more things and more responsibility with the business, our personal lives, etc. It just seems like it's become the new norm just to have this much stress. Like, honestly, if I could go back to a time with a lot less stress and still be able to run the channel, I would be fantastic. I would be perfect at that point when that situation. So honestly, but I will be glad though to get the move over because it is stressful, I will admit. But moving on to our next one here, this one goes to Dark Sheep, and thank you very much, Dark Sheep, for that $50 support right there. And we do appreciate that very much, and thank you for helping to keep the channel running. And I do not see a comment attached to that, but a huge shout out to you once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who help to make this channel possible, even if you don't throw in comments, so that we can keep this thing running every day. So I got to thank you massively for that, because it is folks like you who have helped to make this thing a reality for such a long time. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And I see some people saying in the chat, I saw someone say it, Matthew. I saw someone say it. I'm going to let you address it, Matthew. They said, if you're not Mormon, you're going to be excommunicated from anything in Salt Lake. So Matthew hit it. Matthew hit it.
I see you know your stereotypes well. Good one. But no, seriously speaking, though, like that is a stereotype that no longer exists in Utah. It exists in some places, that stereotype you're talking about, where you get basically shunned if you're not Mormon. That is not the case. I've been out there twice now. In Salt Lake City proper, it is less and less Mormon by the day. And also, by the way, just as a caveat, I do not dislike the Mormons. Like, I have nothing against the Mormons whatsoever. I met some Mormons while I was out there. Nothing against the Mormons. And also, it's a free country. You can believe whatever you want to believe. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I have my personal beliefs, and everybody else is free to have their own. But it's not that way. And also, it seems to be, it's not really super religious anymore for the Mormons in Salt Lake City anymore, and it's starting to wane off. Now, if you go to Provo, that is like a Mormon Central. That is where they literally have their main campus there. So that's going to be a little bit different. But if you're in Salt Lake City proper or the suburbs, you'll generally be pretty okay. I think it's about 45 to 50% Mormon in most areas of Salt Lake now, and that number is dwindling by the day. So, you know, once again, nothing is the Mormons, just saying that as a factual statement. But yeah, it's definitely changing.
Yeah, I would, that's what we've generally looked at, and that's something that people have said a lot, but that's working off of an idea that Utah is the same thing that it was way back when, in like the 70s and the 60s, and so when Utah was a very significant Mormon bastion. And I gotta say, folks, that generally, I'm not a Mormon, but at the same time, I greatly respect the Mormons. They have a very civic-minded sort of an ideology, and that is something that I do respect a great deal, because it does reflect in how they treat others and how they generally go about their day, and also generally how the city of Salt Lake was managed historically, which has been actually quite well. Credit to them. But at the same time, it's not the situation where you're going to go out there and you're going to get ostracized, from what we generally understand. For one, we did go to Salt Lake City, and pretty much everyone I ran into was not Mormon. Like, they either were never a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, or they were former members of the Church of Latter-day Saints. And generally, everyone out there that I asked about of the Mormon situation, they said, oh, no, it's no big deal. You know, like you're not going to get ostracized just because you're a non-Mormon. So I do know that a lot of people have that preconceived notion about the state of Utah, but from what we know going out there and asking people about it, it doesn't appear that there was really any of that such as the case, like a lot of people would think. So,
And honestly, once I found out that you can have, I think the maximum, I'm not sure what the maximum really is. I think it's like 4 or 5 wives. That's when I was like, I made the decision I'm moving to Salt Lake City.
Oh, no, no.
I'm just joking. I'm just joking, by the way.
It's a prank. It's a prank. Like, we're just kidding. We're just kidding. We're just kidding. But, oh, man. Let's see. Also, I saw Kip Boga say, oh, Salt Lake City is a beautiful city. If it wasn't in the desert, it would be amazing. It's almost like Denver. Really, like, yeah, I see what you're saying there. But one thing I think is really unique about that is that it's literally like half and half. Look at everything to the east of Salt Lake City. It's green and forested and really nice. And then everything to the west is desert-like. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, you know? You get to drive to the east and be in the mountains and in the green forests of the Wasatch National Forest, or you get to drive west and be out in the desert for the large part, and even the Great Salt Flats, which is pretty cool when you think about it like that. It's a very interesting sort of a location, because in Alabama what you get is endless forest. The whole state is covered in forests, so you never really see anything other than trees, so you don't really see much of anything at all because it's all forest. On the other hand, if you lived in Denver, you would see generally the arid plains. Like, we've been through here before, and I would describe this as the most arid of plains. You wouldn't see much like this elsewhere. Let me drop y'all down here and show y'all. Actually, it did not look like this when we came through, Matthew. Remember, it was like raw brown. Like, don't you remember that?
This never works out when you drop the thing somewhere on Google Maps and you try to prove something. It's always the opposite. It's always the opposite. And also, look at the satellite view. It also looks the way you're talking about.
Yeah.
But then you set it down the street and it looks green.
Hold up. Let's drop it down here. Let's drop it. Yeah, this is what it was like, kind of, for the most part. Man, honestly, man, I feel like I was going crazy there. I dropped it down and it was the greenest of green. I was like, there's no damn way. Let me see if I can... Oh, this is exactly what it looked like. It looked just like this. Just like this. And it wasn't even the fall when we went through. It was the middle of the summer. In the middle of the summer. As y'all know the song. But beyond that, it looked just like this. It was hellish. I hated this, actually. This was my least favorite place in America for a very long time. At least as far as the landscape looked. Because it looked like this. I mean, who in the hell would like that? You know, that's rough looking. But anyways,
this is the type of street you drive down right here too late at night, and you see like lights in the sky. That's that type of street right there. And then you start swerving and stuff all over the road, and then you crash and stuff like that. Then you get abducted by aliens, and then somehow you end up naked, and you end up on the side of the road naked.
And then you tell crazy stories for the rest of your life, too, about what happened. But beyond that, that's kind of what all of east of what's out in Denver and Colorado kind of looks like to me. That's what I remember it in my mind. And that's something that's, it's not really that great. You know, like it doesn't look that good. But I will say the Rockies are breathtakingly beautiful. Like, really they are. And so Denver does have that going for it, but it doesn't really have anything to its east. So it has, like, one good side and then one side that's kind of like, meh, if you drive out to look at the wilderness. In Utah, though, at Salt Lake City, you have the mountains, which are very similar to the Rockies, at least to me, they looked like it. Some people might disagree. And then to the west, you also have the desert, which is like a real desert, which is really crazy because, you know, me and Enforcer Matt, we didn't grow up in a desert. So when you come out here, and it looks like this, I mean, this is like absolutely crazy to this. This may as well be Mars or some form of an alien landscape to us because we've never seen it before. I'm sure that this does get old, though, because, you know, I wouldn't want to live in the desert straight up, just to be honest with y'all. I don't like the desert that much. But this is still really cool to look at.
Yeah, and also we have been out here before. I see some people saying y'all will like the drive. We've actually been out here before a while back. It was a long time ago before we were on the channel. So we have been out here before in that drive. And we've definitely not been out to the salt flats, like for certain. But I will tell you, every time I see the salt flats, I'm not sure if it works like this. I'll have to find this out before I go accidentally hurt myself on the salt flats by accident, not knowing how it works. But every time I see it, I look at it and think, dang, that would be wild to take a dirt bike on that. Like, I'm not sure if someone in Utah that lives out there, is it okay to do that? I've heard that sometimes you can get bogged down out there or something, or maybe you can like accidentally get caught up in it. There's some dirt bikes.
Yeah.
Look at that. Well, also, wait, was that a memorial?
We
I
don't
think
talk.
they're at a memorial.
We don't talk about the memorial. we don't talk about the memorial.
Man. Honestly, I'm not sure if I'll ride it out there. If there's memorials out there, I don't want to end up like with a cross over me or something like that. I might have to think about that.
Oh, that one. Oh, I thought you were talking about the sacrifice to the Jeep gods. Oh, I thought, no, you're talking about the cross out here. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, you know, do people die in this? Let's just ask that. Do people die in the Utah salt flats? Oh.
You can? Oh, people have died at it.
Yeah, they just go missing and die out there, apparently.
Oh, no, they're talking about from high-speed racing accidents. Yeah, I've heard about those. There was a really bad one out there when they were testing some high-speed, like land speed record vehicle out there or something. Some guy got really jacked up. Richard Hammond wasn't one of the ones that got injured out there, was he? Because, you know, Richard's been in a lot of vehicle accidents. I don't think he got injured there. He got injured with that demon dragster. I don't know where that was. Was it the Salt Flats?
Yeah, apparently, I would suppose. But only 10 people have died out there in the salt flats. So, you know, you're shooting good odds to go out there and have nothing happen to you.
Let's see. Richard Hammond dragster crash. Let's see if that was Salt Lake. No. That was at REF Elvington side of the UK. That's where he got injured. That was back in 2006. So no, it wasn't the salt flats. I was about to say, was that really where Richard got jacked up in that really bad crash? But no, that wasn't him though. That was somewhere else. But honestly though, like high speed anything is dangerous. Like that's dangerous no matter if you're on the salt flats or wherever you are.
So let's see here. So one guy just was found dead. He just went missing out there, and then they found him dead. So I guess he just died from exposure.
Oh, could you imagine though if your car like broke down or something out there? I'm not sure.
God.
I'm not sure if you have cell phone service out there. You might actually, die out there because you can't get anybody to help.
Yeah, honestly, that's like a high risk of happening because I don't think there's any real cell phone service out there in the salt flats like that. So yeah, there's a risk of that. Generally, I'm not really one for the salt flats, folks. I would probably drive out there and look at it once and then come back. But one thing that I do find really interesting, folks, are all the mountains over here on the promontory front, which is the mountain range that is lining right over to the east of Salt Lake right here. This is the promontory front, which pretty much goes all the way down the state of Utah. You can actually see it here, which is really cool. And there also is this really interesting place, at least to me, right around here. Right here. Look at this. This is really pretty looking. Like, really neat. And that wasn't the spot I was actually trying to find. This is the spot that I was trying to find. Look at that. That's crazy. That's like an hour's drive out of Salt Lake, or less, really.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I want to hike in this place sometime like that. Oh, wow, look at that. Well, that looks like Switzerland.
Yeah, I know. Like, but really, the first picture looked like Switzerland. Look at that. That's like the Alps. That's like any of the Alps, really.
It looks like Bern.
Bern. It looks like Innsbruck or Elmensdorf or something along those lines. But I mean, that is just insanely beautiful with the high voltage line running through the middle. Chef's kiss. Really quintessential American. I mean, just it's like a crazy. Look at that. I mean, look at that, folks. That is 40 minutes from Salt Lake City. I mean, that's crazy, really. You know, there's a lot of natural beauty out there, and on top of that, it gives us something to do. You know, something to walk through, something to meander around and take a little gander at. You know, when we're not on air. Because while we don't have a lot of time off air, when we have any time off air, it's not really a long amount of time. So really nice stuff to do has to be kind of close, or we just never get to do it. So having something like this within a 40 minutes drive of the city, that's really nice. Like, you know, we could go out here and wander around a little bit and then come back on the show, like we do every night, and have a pretty nice mindset, you know, getting to get out there and be in the quiet of nature and mauled by a mountain lion or some other larger creature that lives within these mountains. But you know, yeah, that's you know, that's something that a lot of people wouldn't show you about a place like Utah, is the kind of beautiful natural scenery that's out here. And hell, you know, we even have Hot Dog Man's favorite, Gobbler's Knob. He knows much about this.
Oh, damn. I'll tell you what. Man, I'll tell you what. I've heard rumors there's more cougars out here in these mountains than in Los Angeles.
Oh, damn. Oh, man, I've been telling you, man. I've been hearing, man, that the Dyson vacuum was invented because someone took a trip around Gobbler's Knob and got an idea from it. I've been hearing a lot of things. Like, I've been hearing a lot of interesting things about Gobbler's Knob. And you know, there's a lot of legend around this mountain.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the legends are those Diddy legends. I'm telling you, those some legends right there. I don't know if I want to find out about, really.
Have you ever heard the folk tale? I'm sure you've heard of Mothman, but you ever heard of the tale of the Wasatch Gobbler? Like a man come around your campsite at night.
Hell no. I'm not having any part of that. Hell no.
Man, we're gonna start a brand new folk tale. It's gonna be the Wasatch Gobbler, man. Man, you sit out in the campsite at night and you wake up and go, "Hey, wait a minute!" Like, get to bro. We're gonna start brand new folklore here on this channel right now, folks. We just came up with the Wasatch Gobbler. That is, honestly, man, I'm not gonna lie. I know I made the joke, but I actually got a pretty damn good kick out of that one for no reason at all. But anyways, folks, it is time for us to move on into some more questions, some more great and wonderful questions, folks, because we've got so much to speak of and talk about even still. And also, let's see. Also, I see a lot of people talking about there's no coffee in Salt Lake. No, there is. Like there is, like there's bars, there's all kinds of stuff out there, like a whole bunch of cool stuff. Like take a gander at this, folks. Let me show you this in downtown Salt Lake. This is really cool. This place right here. Let's see. Where in the world's the gateway? Ah, yes, the gateway, my boy, Mr. Squidward. Look at this. This is really cool.
Yeah, the gate. Oh yeah, that thing right there.
Let's see. I'm trying to see if I can get y'all a larger picture. Look at that. Look at that. That's so neat. That's so cool. Mandy, where's that mall with the lake? Oh, not the lake, but the creek in it.
That's City Creek Mall or City Creek Center. It's the one that the I think the Mormon Church I think the Mormon Church owns it. I'm not really sure though, but it's right down the street from the one you just looked at to the right.
To the right. So it's over here?
No,
that's
the
the left. Whoopsie daisy. Whoopsie daisy, everyone. I know my left from my right. Is it this place right here?
I think so. It's called City Creek something.
City Creek. It's where Psycho Bunny's at. Hey, look at that. Psycho Bunny. Let's see here. How in the world do we go down here to City Creek? Oh, look, it has track service. Wow, that's cool. So you can actually ride the tracks right here to it. That's pretty cool. Let's drop down and take a little look. Wow, look at that. That's pretty cool.
That's nice. That's wild to see a functioning mall. Like this one actually appears to have, now right here it looks pretty vacant, but when I was there, it appeared to have traffic in the mall. So that's interesting. Most malls, not just in Alabama, like I'm not going to say it's just Alabama, most malls around the country have started dying off because I think like mall culture is kind of dying. I'll admit though, this is pretty vacant. I'm not sure what time of day this was taken, but this is pretty vacant. Oh, look, the Apple Store is right there. That's pretty neat.
This was taken in 2018, interestingly enough. But
Interesting.
malls have been making a resurgence recently.
Yeah, I honestly like malls. It's just as long as the malls stay, with a little crime in it. The problem is in Alabama, most of our malls have horrible crime. Like I remember our Montgomery Mall. It turned into a bad place. Like it became sort of dangerous to go there. And then also that happened here in Birmingham too. I think they're trying to get a grip on it though. I think they're trying to like make it safer, but honestly, like it's kind of getting tough.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. The way you phrased that, it came out the totally wrong way. You're like, I'm fine with malls as long as they have a little crime in them. Like I was like, yo,
Very
what?
little crime, actually.
Oh my god, bro! Now the way you said it, man, it's like you would refuse to go to a mall unless if it had at least some crime in it. That's how it came out, man. Because you said, I mean, I'm fine with the mall as long as it's got a little crime in it. I was like, what? I was like, hey, yo, what? I was like, hold up now. But still, this place is really cool. And that was a neat place too. That was like, wow, that's really neat. Also, what in the world is this convention center? Wow, that's actually crazy. I didn't see that. What kind of conventions do they have in here? Oh, yes, they have the convention of the red swirly strings. Everyone knows about that one. And then they also have this guy. That's just Lavrov. When did Lavrov come to Salt Lake?
Dear God, what is that?
I don't know. I have no clue. But
Fan X. Fan X. That right there. That is fan unknown.
Not our fan. I don't think he is. But let's see. I mean, look at that. The wildlife of Salt Lake, freshly shot. They bring him right in. Like they bring them right in. Wow, that's oh my God. It's the puffy guy from like the whatchamacallit, the Ghostbusters thing. But it's a convention center. Like really any other. So that's not really like a huge thing. Like, oh my God, they have a convention center. We have one. But there's a lot of cool stuff to do here is what I'm trying to say, folks. It's what I'm trying to say. It's what I'm trying to get across to y'all. And so it's a neat place for that. Like we're probably doing more for the PR of Salt Lake City than most other people have done. Because there's like 9,000 people here right now. And we're like going on this glazing venture about Salt Lake City. So I guess, maybe the Department of Tourism of the state of Utah needs to hire us or at least sponsor us so that way we can do this and get something from it. We scratch their back, they scratch ass. I'm just kidding, by the way, but still it's a neat place. And also they have this absolutely massive cemetery. Like, I'm just kidding, folks. It's not like a huge attraction of Salt Lake City, but that is a massive cemetery. I mean, like, oh my God, look at that. That is huge. How big is that across? Dang, that's a half-mile across, north to south and east to west. The thing is nearly like about more than half a mile across. That is a huge cemetery. I haven't seen a lot that
That
size.
is. That's massive. That's over there in an area called the Avenues, which is like some little neighborhood area over there. I remember when I first got there and I drove out in the rental car. The first place I went was like it was a road at the very top of the Avenues toward the mountains up there, kind of where your mouse cursor was at. I
Yeah.
just got out of the car and walked out and literally stood there and looked over the city and was just sort of like I just had to stare at it for like I think 15 minutes just standing there. I was like, damn, this is wild. Like I was kind of in shock. I was actually there. I was kind of like, huh, this is kind of wild. Like this is actually Salt Lake. I just had to stand there and just like listen for like 10 or 15 minutes or something. I was like, oh, okay. Then I finally got in the car and got busy looking around and finding places. But yeah, it was wild going there the first time.
And I just saw someone say in the chat, they say, go on, show the train station. Oh, no, I won't. Go on, show it. Okay, since you insist, I'll show it. You know what? I'll go show the station. They're pretty cool. Let me see if I can go find the cool ones, because there's actually two big ones here. This one, which is now the Utah Division of Arts and Museums, which used to be the Rio Grande station here in the city. This is what it looks like inside the station right now, but this is what it looks like outside. And it still has the Rio Grande sign in neon outside. Is that cool? Is that freaking sick? But the inside doesn't really look, well, it actually looks a lot like it used to with the ticket counters and everything, but now it's an art museum. And generally, folks, in my experience, I just haven't really been a big fan of modern art museums, so probably not a place I would go to rather than just look at the outside of it. But they also have this one that's been included in the Gateway Mall, which is the old Union Pacific station here in the city. And let me see if I can get y'all the Salt Lake City Union Pacific Depot. This is a really cool one. I like the big Union Pacific sign on it. I just hope that they don't merge with Norfolk Southern, my personal opinion. But still, look at the inside of this thing. It's beautifully restored, bespoke even.
This place was nice. I think this is actually a hotel right here, but this hotel here I think was a little pricey, if I recall correctly. There was two really nice hotels. There was the Grand America Hotel that was extremely pricey, and then there was this one that was also pricey too. But they were very nice looking, and this one's in the old train place, so it was pretty neat.
Yeah, in the old Union Station, which is really neat. And just take a look at it on the snowy day in January. I mean, it just screams Union Station. If y'all don't know, this is a cool fact. The railroads here in Salt Lake used to take up this entire area behind this building. So the actual platform tracks that came behind the station were literally right behind it, right through here. And they were through tracks that went north to south. All of that, including the rail yard through this area, was demolished. That's also why you'd see down here, the Rio Grande station is that far away from the tracks. All of this development through here is practically brand new within the past 40 years because of how the railroads have been restructuring and all of the mergers. They need less rail yards. So a lot of these rail yards here in Salt Lake, they became redundant and they ripped them up. So most of the rail yards that you will see nowadays here around the Salt Lake area, they're either up at Ogden or they're down in Provo. So that's actually why these Union stations look like they're so far inside of the city, is because at one point, this was a massive rail yard in this area. But anyways, beyond that interesting fact of railroad history here in the city of Salt Lake City and the state of Utah, I gotta say the train stations are really cool. And also, on top of that, another thing is that up in Ogden, which you can ride the train to because they still have one, there is also another Union station up here, which you can also take a look at. They also have an entire railway museum. Wow. The neatest thing, they even have a GTEL. That's the thing here on the far right. That's actually a gas turbine engine, and the engine burns so hot, Matthew, the exhaust coming out of the top of this engine would actually burn and melt bridges above it. No joke. So they banned this thing, the GTELs, from operating in LA, because if they ever stopped under a road bridge, they would literally melt the bridge above them.
Damn, that would suck.
Man, it would suck, but look at that station. That's a really good looking one too. And also, restored to look like it once did. It's kind of like a mini version of LA Union Station, like the Mission Revival style.
It really does look close. I was about to say that.
Yeah, it really does. It was built, I think, by the Union Pacific, which also had a really big hand in building the LA Union Station. So this was kind of like this was really just the style of the Southwest at the time, was that like Spanish Mission Revival style and also like some Native American influences as well. Really cool style, actually. I think it's neat. But that's also another cool one. And the front runner has a platform literally right past it, right here. And you can ride this all the way down from Salt Lake City and elsewhere. And they're also planning on expanding the service to where the trains will be faster. They'll go about 110 miles per hour here at the later end of this decade. And not only that, the services are going to be twice as frequent. So it's going to be a real interurban, which doesn't really exist in most parts of America. So that is incredibly cool too. And look at these mountains. Wow. Ogden. Really neat. But anyways, with that, folks, I hope we addressed that all well. We've been rabbit holing for so long on this whole deal, but those are some cool things about Salt Lake City. Let's just hope the population isn't salty. Get it? But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, quick fun fact, I'm going to jump on to the next super chat. I believe, if I have the numbers correctly, Salt Lake City, the metro of Salt Lake City, the entire area, including the suburbs of it as well, is the fastest growing GDP of any city in the country, if I have that correct, which is kind of wild to think that. There's a lot of people moving there because big companies are also moving there as well. So kind of fascinating. Hopefully it doesn't become overpopulated, or that could be also problematic. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to Danny B, Chef Danny B, that is, and it's Danny B 9955 because they have the handles in here now. But Danny put in that 60, and thank you very much, Danny, for that very generous support. He said, "Good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny B 9955 here, and I just pulled a 12er today, and I see audiobooks and documentaries in my near future for about 4 to 5 days. And any suggestions on books or documentaries?"
Oh, that's an interesting one, Danny B. Danny B. That's a great question. Now, if I had to give a suggestion for some great books, I'll actually give you some suggestions on the books I've been able to read over the past few months. The History of Coal was a wildly interesting read for what sounds like a very boring topic. My recommendations may not be the best. I find interest in very mundane stuff. Most people wouldn't. But The History of Coal was a really good book. Another great book was The Box, which is about the shipping container and the history of the shipping container and how it revolutionized the trade industry, really the international trade industry mostly, which was a really cool read as well. And then another one that I read, and this one was really interesting because it gave a glimpse of what life was like throughout a lot of the Victorian era of the United States and also the earlier part of the last century, at least on a domestic level. The History of the Louisville and Nashville Railroad by Kincaid Hare, spelled Herr. That was a wildly interesting read. It was like 800 pages long, and it laid out the entire history of the Louisville and Nashville Railroad from beginning to finish, which railroads aren't always interesting to everyone. But one thing that was really interesting in that book is that it really talked more so on top of the railroad about what was going on in the world and how that influenced the railroad, which tells you a lot about things that you don't ever really hear about in even any history lessons that they don't teach you about America, like all of the epidemics and pandemics that came through back then, all of the economic upturns and downturns, because the railroad would have to react to every single one of those, so it became a big part of their company's railroading history. So that was a really cool thing. But that would be a couple of reads that I would recommend highly to read because I found them all just insanely interesting, and they were really, honestly, some of the coolest books that I've read, at least in a while. And another interesting one, at least to me, was The History of Shipping, like at sea. That was a really interesting book to me as well, because it talked about how shipping has moved from that break bulk kind of shipping that used to be done on the high seas in the Age of Sail back in the 18th century, and how that's moved on into very specialized massive ships that carry specific types of cargo at extremely cheap, I guess you could say, costs per unit. Really cool sort of a thing to read about as well. And also all the kinds of challenges that it faced too. So I would have to say that would be probably some of the good recommendations for reads that I could give for books, because those are just, it's just insanely interesting to read about stuff, in my opinion, that affects us every day that no one ever thinks about or talks about, because you gain a lot of greater respect for the world around you and what is going on every day. You don't have to read about what SEAL Team 6 did, because most people aren't ever going to be SEAL Team 6 material. I know I'm certainly not. And I also know that a lot of what they do is hardly even known to the public, so, not really much of a point in reading about them, at least, in my personal belief. But, knowing about how your electricity is made, how your food is made, how the shipping in the world works, to how you get your goods every day, all that sort of stuff, that is just so wildly interesting to me. The massive tectonic feats that are made every day for people to just buy a loaf of bread and to have a light bulb turn on above them. But still, With that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And a massive, humongous thanks to you, Chef of the LSA, Danny B, 9955, for helping this channel to keep on running, because it's been folks like you who have made this thing possible for years and years, and help us to keep this thing running for many years more. And so with that, a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And also, let's see, I see someone saying, Hell on Wheels. I've heard so much about the Hell on Wheels series, and that actually sounds like a really cool one, because if y'all don't know about it, the Hell on Wheels television series was about the American railroads, or at least the construction of the first transcontinental railroad. And while, of course, it's a little bit dramatized, it does take a very interesting look at the development of the transcontinental railroad, because there was so much that was going on back then. And I think if I remember correctly, they actually represented the president of the Union Pacific properly. Because if y'all know anything about the story of the Transcontinental Railroad, when they drove the Golden Spike at Promontory Summit in 1869, pretty much the entire portion of the Union Pacific's railroad was unusable, almost completely. And so they had to rebuild it all over the next several years. And it was hilarious because they would just build to build, because the government paid them per mile of rail. So they would just build in the craziest damn ways possible to extend the amount of mileage in their rails. So they would have all kinds of twists and turns and extremely high grades and just nutty stuff going on. So that way the government would pay them exorbitantly per mile of rail that they built. So basically, they had to go rebuild the whole thing to actually make it usable. And several years after the fact, in about 1872, it finally was generally usable and not hell on earth to operate. So that's a little bit of an interesting fact. You can even still see that. Funnily enough, I'll show you all this up here near Promontory. This right here is the Big Fill. This is what the Central Pacific built, because the Central Pacific realized when they were about to join the two railroads together in 1869, they were like, oh my God, the Union Pacific is building like an idiot, because the Union Pacific would do these crazy grades of like 2%, which at the time was insane. Like most locomotives could hardly handle that. And it would take a huge amount of effort to get anything up that track or down the track for that matter. And so they were like, these people are insane. We're going to build something more appropriate. So they built the Big Fill, so that way, instead of having an insane-o 2% grade uphill and downhill, it would be about 1% or 1.2%. Generally, the Central Pacific never exceeded the 1 or 1.2% grade. Union Pacific would easily go up to 2.4% and 2.6% sometimes, and not even bat an eye, although that pretty much was inoperable by railroad standards of the era. So a little bit of an interesting thing, but Hell on Wheels is an interesting series to watch. I haven't personally watched it, but I've always heard raving reviews about it. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a massive, humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running. And before we move on to the next one, Matthew, how many super chats do we have left?
We have approximately 40 left.
Oh, well, we are going to have to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Crispy9775, and he put in a $50 combined super chat. And thank you very much, Crispy, for that $50 support right there. And it's very good to see you once again with the 4 numbers behind your name now, 9775. It makes you sound very human. You know, the design's very human with that username right there. You turn from Crispy to a whole set of numbers behind them too. They've done a number on us, I tell you, dang it. But thank you very much, Crispy. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Crispy. You didn't throw in a comment, and I've got to thank you massively for the support, because your support helps us to eat the Costco chicken and keep the lights on. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Hokey Redneck, and he puts in a 50. And a huge shout out to you, Hokey, for the very massive support tonight amongst many different super chats. And he said, can you buy a Coke or a Diet Coke with caffeine in Salt Lake City? And yes, you can. And believe it or not, there's caffeine all over the place. Like, I know that people say that the LDS Church doesn't let you drink caffeine. I think that is true. I'm not a Mormon, but I think that is true.
That is true.
But you can get Coke, all these other things out there everywhere. Like, they have soda stores without the caffeine in it all over the place. Like, they're all over. Also, there's a whole bunch of coffee stores everywhere out there too. So when people say they don't have coffee, I'm like, you know, you can drive down the block and there's a Starbucks or a coffee store like within every block. So I don't understand. But Enforcer, what say you?
let's see here. Let's look at the locations of Starbucks in Salt Lake City. Oh, look, there they are. There's all of them, as a matter of fact. There's a load of them, as a matter of fact. Let's search this whole area of Salt Lake City. So there's actually a lot of Starbucks, and obviously they're going to be selling coffee with caffeine in it. So they do, in fact, have caffeine. Now, that's actually something that a lot of people don't know as well, is that the Mormons aren't anti-caffeine anymore like they once were. They actually now say that soft drinks are fine. It's alcohol that they still have a complete prohibition on religiously. So what they do to get around that is that the Mormons actually have these places called swig. Well, it's not really a Mormon thing, but it's more so a Utah thing. Because of the heavy Mormon population, they have swig, which are these little stores that dress up sodas kind of like cocktails or come up with combinations of them. So, you can take a look at any of them and you can see here the different kinds of deals that they make the sodas into. These are sodas. They do have caffeine in them, but the Mormons do frequent them quite heavily because this is kind of their, if you want to call it, a societal guilty pleasure that's still acceptable within their religion, but allows them to get a fix in a sense, like a lot of people do with a guilty pleasure, like having a soda or having a drink. This is kind of their deal. So you actually can have caffeine. But still, a massive thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that quite well indeed. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I honestly do not understand. Like, I genuinely don't understand how a lot of people that drink that soda 24/7 out in Utah, because apparently it's a widespread thing to have a soda addiction in Utah because they drink it so often. I don't understand how diabetes isn't widespread. It seems kind of wild because, I think Alabama's got a pretty high diabetes rate because of bad health and things like that. But I don't think Utah has a very high diabetes rate, which is kind of weird considering they drink so much sugar.
Yeah, it is interesting with that. And also another thing, folks, the Mormons can't be against any sort of caffeine because the Church of Latter-day Saints or the Latter-day Saints Corporation actually owns stock in Coca-Cola, and a decent amount of it actually. So, that would be really hard for them to be against it, considering that their Latter-day Saints Corporation actually owns shares of the Coca-Cola company. With that, I hope that does address that well. Just to give you all of the factoids I can, and also proof as well that exists within the area. Also, better yet, let's pull this up. Bars, or what would those be called, Matthew, on Google? Because it doesn't look like they allow you to pull that up.
Alcohol bar. I don't go to bars. I don't really know what they call it. A social club or something. I don't know.
Let's just type this in and see what happens. Oh, look, there they all are. There's
Dabs. What is that? Is that the state alcohol store?
The Department of Alcoholic Beverages, probably, I would assume.
Dabs. That's kind of an interesting name for an alcohol store.
But they
that
actually
means something else.
Oh man, they got the damn Benjamin. Oh man. But beyond that, see, they have liquor stores. They're state operated like Alabama. We have ABS, which is the Alabama Beverage Systems, I believe.
ABC.
Yeah, ABC, the Alabama Beverage Company or whatever, I believe. But beyond that, they have apparently Dabs, which is their version of a state-run liquor store. So there actually is also alcohol that you can get in the state. But us personally, though, we don't drink. And that's kind of where we don't really have an issue with that, where a lot of people would have an issue with Mormons aren't really heavy in alcohol. We really don't have an issue with that. Because think about our schedule, folks. When in the world could we ever drink? And also drink to the point that we could get plastered? I mean, never. We never could because we're always working and we're always on air. So there really is no time for us to do something like that, even if we wanted to. And to be honest with y'all, folks, I just don't really have a big thing for drinking alcoholic beverages, even if we had the time or the ability to. I just don't really have a thing for it. So, where some people might have found an issue with that, even if that was a problem that existed out there, it's not really that big of an issue for us. So, with that, I hope that does address that the best that I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Kai Foley. And Kai put in a $31 support. And thank you very much, by the way, for supporting the channel. And he said, I can't type in the chat, even though I've been subbed for more than 5 minutes. LOC. And also, by the way, I did see your super chat come through. I'm not sure. There might be glitches happening tonight. Now, if we run a stream tomorrow and all of a sudden the usernames are back to normal and everything's good to go again, I'll assume that maybe it was glitching tonight. But I'm not really sure what to say. Come on, man. YouTube, help us, please. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support. And hopefully we're not dealing with a whole bunch of issues tomorrow. And also, hopefully the usernames will be reverted as well. I pray that they will be. But still, a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And we have a $31 support once again from Ross Nib. And thank you very much, Ross, once again for that second support. He said, winner, winner, chicken dinner. Grab yourselves a Costco chicken on me, guys.
All right, we did it, my boy. We did it. We got another Costco chicken. Man, I got to tell you, Costco chickens fill me with a great deal of joy, folks. The chicken is immaculate. It truly is. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And you, sir, you have gotten us another Costco chicken dinner. And so, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Craig Jones 2067. And thank you very much, Craig, for that $20 support. I do not see a comment attached, but thank you very much for supporting the channel. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but we are still greatly appreciative. And thank you wonderfully for your support. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I see Hectorum in the live chat. He said, Enforcer Matt, come by Denmark. You can get wasted from age 15. Honestly, that's wild. The drinking age in a lot of other countries is very low compared to the United States. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, honestly. I feel like if someone's going to become an alcoholic, I guess if you get older, you're expected to make better decisions. But truthfully, it seems like the older in your teen years you get, the worse decisions you make, actually. So, I mean, to me, I just have an aversion to alcohol. Like I've had alcohol a little bit, but I just don't really find the need. I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, I got to get another drink or something like that. That's not me. Like I'm just like, I don't really care for the stuff personally. It doesn't even taste that good. In fact, it tastes terrible to me actually. And I don't like feeling inebriated or like to not of a level mind. Like I don't like that. It messes me up. And also I'm busy all the time too, so I can't afford to have my mind all over the place, buzzed out from something like that. So I just don't care for me personally. But moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Rubber. And Rubber puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Rubber, for that support. They said, hello, Enforcers. I'm new to the channel and wanted to show support for what y'all do. And good luck on your move to Utah. And I would like to say, sir, they say it's the greatest channel, sir. And thanks and keep it up.
They say it's the greatest channel. It's a wonderful channel. Exists because of the community, the Elite Spring Army, amazing people. And I got to thank you so much for the support and the kind words, because folks like you not only help us to keep this channel running, but encourage us to keep this channel running. And to that, we are amazingly appreciative. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Damien McClay9944, who put in a 20 as well. And Damien said, safe travels to Utah, boys.
Hey, and hopefully we will. It's quite a journey. A very long one, as a matter of fact. I think it's like 1,700 miles. So not short at all. I mean, that's, hell, if you did a road trip like that in Europe, how far could you go in 1,700 miles, even? I don't even know.
Across the whole thing, right into enemy territory.
Really? Is that the case?
Probably. I mean, it's not as large as you think.
Madrid to Warsaw. How about driving? So, how many miles is that? Like, how many miles is this? Does it even say? Does it tell us that in miles? Can we get it? Let's see. Let me just take that right there, and let me just pop that up here and to miles. So that is, oh my God, that is actually the same distance. So to give it our European viewers,
straight into the arms of Putin.
No. Actually, you stop a little short. It's just Madrid to Warsaw. So to put this in perspective for our European viewers, the drive that we're about to undertake to move our headquarters is literally all the way from Madrid, Spain, all the way to Warsaw, Poland. So just to give everyone a perspective of the distance that we are about to move, that is how far it would be in Europe if we were taking the same road trip.
That makes me feel sick as a dog, actually, seeing that distance and understanding how long of a distance that is. That's 3 days of driving nonstop. That's a lot of driving.
On the road again. man, I'm not going to lie. Now that I'm thinking about that, I mean, maybe we want to call this whole thing off, you know? Maybe we just want to stay here, you know? I'm just kidding, folks. We still got to do it because everything's put in motion at this point, so we can't back out. But that is one hell of a distance, you know? Like, when you put it that way, Madrid to Warsaw, I mean, hell, you know, like, Hell, the Germans in World War II had a hard time even trying that one. I mean, how are we how are we supposed to do it? I mean, they had an entire army doing it. We're just two guys in a moving truck. You know, like 2 men in a truck. Now that's something. Like, but anyways,
How are you taking?
damn it. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But honestly, that's insane now that we put it in perspective.
Honestly, that is insane. But moving on to our next super chat here, this one is going to go to Glock Who's There, LSA, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Mr. Glock, for that support. He said, since the enforcer said A-10 air weapons, are we free to talk about the Warthog again, or are we still sanctioned to talk about it in LSA?
We're still sanctioned. We're still sanctioned. It's something we cannot talk about. Excuse me. You cannot talk about it because the A-10 Warthog has had his wings destroyed by Facts and Logic. Thanks. You're wrong. And shut up. but be honest, I'm just kidding with you. I do thank you for the support though. And the A-10, just due to people being very vehement about their opinions to the point of violence, we still cannot talk about it, unfortunately. But all I was saying is that the A-10 Warthog could carry a weapon like that. But I wasn't trying to even at all say that the A-10 was good or not in combat. So I'm very sorry about that. We still cannot talk about the A-10. But a humongous thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next one here. This one is going to go to... Also, by the way, just real quick, I hate to keep like diverting every time I get to a new super chat, but I see a lot of people saying here that once we dismantle the studio and get ready to drive off, something huge is going to happen in the world, and we won't be here to cover it. I hope that's not the case. Like, but unfortunately, though, like the way it really does work, I'm not saying this just to be funny. It seems like every time we end up going somewhere, something does end up happening. So you know, there's really no way we're going to be able to cover it if we're on the road. Like, there's really no way because the schedule is so tight, we can't afford to pull over and do that. Or otherwise, it's going to throw the entire plan off kilter. So hopefully it doesn't happen, but it looks like the Venezuela strikes are right around the corner. So, I mean, the odds of it happening are pretty high, honestly. So we'll just have to sort of roll with it. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to Chris Feilbach. And Chris put in a $20 support. And thank you very much, good sir, as well. He said, 2 days ago, you answered my noob questions and said my last name right, which is rare and nice.
Oh, and thank you so much for the support. I always find fun in answering questions. Nowadays, one thing that's fun to me, kind of though, and I find this kind of engaging, especially for everyone, is to bring up a detracting statement and then give a counter to it. I always find that fun. But I still do thank you for the support because I know your questions weren't those types. They were just asking general questions about how things went. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying the channel and supporting it, and also finding worth in us answering your question. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bradley Barrows. Excuse me, by the way. And Bradley puts in a 20. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He said, mail call. And remember those who served on the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Has anyone gone down the triple on one down? I don't even know when that thing sank, but still, everyone knows the Edmund Fitzgerald because of that song that talked about the Edmund Fitzgerald. That thing, you know, that was a rough one. You ever heard the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald, Matthew?
I haven't.
That's a story for another time. But it was let me just show you the ship though, because that is a pretty interesting deal. This is the Edmund Fitzgerald, which was the biggest freighter on the Great Lakes when it went down. So it's kind of like their version of the Titanic almost.
That's a huge freighter right there. That's a barge.
Yeah, so to cut the story short for some people, if you haven't heard it, the ship got into rough seas, and due to, I believe it was some form of lack of maintenance or something else along those lines, the ship actually split in two. It broke its back in the middle of the rough seas, and it just went down. I believe, if I remember correctly, it actually crested a wave. The bow went into the wave and then pretty much under the wave, and the force of the wave holding the bow of the ship down is actually what broke its back and forced it to sink. But it's now sitting about 550 feet down in the middle of, I believe, if I remember, it's Lake Huron. Actually, no, I think it's Lake Superior because it was near to Whitefish Bay. Where in the world is Whitefish Bay? I think it's up here somewhere. Let me pull that up. Whitefish Bay. We got to know. It's important to the plot. Whitefish Bay. Yeah, it actually was around here. So it's somewhere around here. It was only about 10 miles out, and it went down. The lights disappeared, and nobody really knew what happened until I think it was the next day, and then they knew that it had sank, and everyone on board died, unfortunately, in the sinking. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Great note to end that on, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Hokey Redneck yet again, and he puts in a $50 support and a huge shout to you, Hokey, for the
Hey!
third or fourth super chat of the night. And he said, "Can Andrew drive a double clutch 4-speed straight body?" Honestly, like I really doubt he could. He might be able to maybe drive the iron chassis rumbler cab with a floater, but I'm not sure about the double clutch 4-speed straight body. But Enforcer, what say you?
What the hell is this mumbo jumbo like that you're talking about? What is this?
I don't even know.
Bro, you're like, man, the triple double flux capacitor. I'm like, what is that? Like, what is that? I don't know if I could handle that, honestly. I don't know what that is, but I don't think I could handle it. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And moving on to our next super chat, this one goes to Boulder Boy, who puts in a $15 support. And Boulder Boy said, "Thanks for another stream."
Hey, thank you so much for the support, Boulder Boy. And help this channel to keep running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and make this thing possible. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to 42VS42, who puts in an $11 support. Thank you very much for that support. I'm trying to get myself together. But
why are you dying laughing, man? What's up? Are you good? Are you okay?
Honestly, I was impressed with the fact I was able to come up with that mumbo jumbo on the spot. Honestly, I was impressed by that. I'm laughing because I'm in shock. But 42 said, "I moved from Utah to Florida 5 years ago. I miss Utah so much. The mountains, the dry air, the vibe, and I'm jealous but happy for y'all, and you deserve an upgrade."
All right, and thank you so much for the support. And I got to say, Florida, dry air. I know exactly what you mean. Florida air is oppressive. Like, it beats everyone down in Florida. It's so humid that it actually feels heavy. It's really hard to explain to people unless you've ever been to Florida in the midday in the summer, or really anywhere in the South, because the humidity's like that throughout most of Alabama. Extremely humid, to the point you can cut the air with a knife. Like, no joke, you probably could. But I gotta say, big thanks to you for the support, and we're looking forward to being out there in Utah. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Robert Krogan, who puts in a 10. And Robert said, "So have a coffee or energy drink on your trip."
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And we will definitely have a coffee or two on the trip. Now, I know that that's a certainty. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to OK State 42, who puts in a 10. And this one's from last night, actually. And he put in the question tonight. He said, "Enforcer Matt, my super chat question from last night was, the sanctions on Russian oil are a great start and much overdue, but why not sanction every Russian company, and then America could send those hawks?"
Generally, it's kind of allowing for an escalatory step. We only have to sanction the major ones to cause dire damage, which we've kind of done at this point. The smaller ones, that's really getting more towards a formality. Like, it's kind of just fine-tuning at that point, but it allows us to make an additional step. And generally in foreign policy actions, you always want to leave room to make an additional step before you have to move to the entirely next thing. So that's generally why we did that, instead of just going for the whole kit and caboodle out at the start. So I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to T50's Louder, who puts in a 10. They said that drones that drop leaflets, memory sticks, might be a way to counter information being blocked by Russia. And thanks, guys.
They actually do that, actually, crazily enough. A big thanks to you for the support, and they've done that on the front lines. They drop USB sticks and leaflets and all sorts of deals to the Russians to tell them what really is going on they don't know about. So a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And also, I don't mean to go on the side, folks, like Matthew was saying a second ago, but I see folks talking about some place called Crown Burger in Salt Lake City. Let me pull that up. Crown Burger. Let's take a look. What are these? What are these? Let's go to this one up here. Oh my God. That is diabetes and cholesterol overload right there. Oh my God. Oh my God, look at that shake. Dude, that thing is like the size of a small house or like a dog.
I don't think Utah's caught up with diabetes education.
Oh my God. That actually looks good though.
That corned beef?
I think so. Possibly on top of an actual hamburger patty. Wow, that's folks, you're gonna die if you eat here from probably cholesterol, but it looks damn good. I will say that.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Oh, they have a lettuce wrap.
That lettuce really did something.
Oh my god. I saw some people in the chat saying, you know, I feel sinful eating here, and I'm not even religious. And I was like, yeah, how bad can this be? I mean, they even have like the throne for you to sit in to take the picture. Like, this is a place with a whole vibe going on. You know, like I'll give it a shot. I don't think I could eat this normally. I think I might die of a heart attack, but I'll give this thing a shot. And apparently everything's topped with pastrami. That's apparently their selling point, is that it's pastrami. Very
I
interesting.
like a good pastrami.
Also, this place is kind of ritz for a burger shop.
Damn, look at that. They're selling the Gucci burger.
Yeah, they're selling that pastrami Gucci burger with a whole fireplace. This is nuts. It's like this is actually crazy, folks. I've never seen a place like this before. Very interesting. What does the outside look like? Oh, they got like even like a slight medieval theme to the outside.
I'll tell you what. They're reliving the days of the royalty right here. This is not peasantry. This is straight up royalty. Could you imagine peasants eating like this?
Never. I'm like, never. But still, very interesting. You never heard of this place. Apparently local to the Salt Lake area. It's almost that heart attack special. I don't know. I mean, I'd still try it. It looks very good, but I don't know if that's good for your health in the long run, like especially for an everyday meal. But still, with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a 15. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. He said, "Baba moo woof quack. It's time for that marmot."
Hey, you know what? It is time for that marmot. We haven't seen Alan the Marmot in a minute. Where is Alan the Marmot? And Alan the Marmot is right here. Oh, hello there. Hey!
Oh, there, Governor. It's another day. It's another restful day with YouTube changing the features. It's a good day. Corporatism is going off the hinges here. They said, make a change, any change. Just, you need to justify your position here at the company. That's what they said. Well, they said, if you're mama, you ain't gotta worry about it because you sell rock on the side. You ain't gotta worry about corporatism. There's no corporatism structure in this whole thing. But what's that fly saying, eh?
Aw, man. Aw, man, I'm about to make another hit piece on It's the Enforcer 977771503WXYZ. Aw, man, and I need a desk and a chair and a trip to DC for Hot Dog Media 19777WZXY. Aw, man, the username changes have made it a lot harder to dox and terrorize people, but we'll find a way. Aw, man, that's Hot Dog's words, not mine. But beyond that, I gotta tell y'all, it is something to see Alan the Marmot on screen. And I gotta say, it's a wonderful and incredible thing to know that thanks to Duncan VR 19888WZ7, that we were able to show Alan the Marmot on screen. And so, a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running and making this thing a reality. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Rebecca Bruce, who puts in a 10. And Rebecca said, best channel on YouTube in LSA.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, helping this channel to keep on running. And I thank you for saying that we're the best channel on YouTube, because we are. I mean, we just are. I'm just kidding, by the way. There's a lot of YouTube channels out there who do a lot better work than us. But I do thank you so much for the kind words, because that is very high praise. It's a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Kyle HD7, who puts in a 10. And he said he doesn't personally like the Secretary of Defense or War, but he does agree with what he's doing with the military. And military action against the cartels is their greatest fear.
I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Let's see. I'm trying to see how to say this. Everyone I know, and I'm not going to get into names or anything here, but a lot of people I know who have anonymously spoken to me, and a lot of people who have anonymously spoken to me who are in the military, generally do not have a positive outlook on that, in particular, because a lot of it actually doesn't make sense. Like, it sounds cool to the public, and it sounds like we're taking it back, like that's how it's presented, but a lot of people in the military don't really get a lot of what he's doing. from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, Y, element O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, Z, W, X, Y, Z sort of perspectives, going through the whole alphabet of a million different reasons from every single branch. A lot of it doesn't really make all too much sense. And so I would have to say, generally, that sort of stuff is up to opinion, but at least from what I've been hearing, and this isn't my personal opinion, this is literally just feedback from the dozens of people that I know who are in the military. None of them like anything that he's doing, and that's not just one branch. That's every single branch in the armed forces, and everyone I've talked to, they're like, "What the hell is this? This makes no sense." From literally 500 different perspectives and reasons why. So I'd have to say, public optics wise, of course, when you put a camera on it and you do some neat little cuts, it looks kind of neat. But when you're actually there having to deal with it, it's not, at least from what everyone's saying. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and this one right here is going to go to none other than Zyper Sniper 1771. And thank you very much, Zyper Sniper, for that $20 support. And also, 1771 has been added to Zyper Sniper's name. And he said, coffee fund for the enforcers. And Russia always threatens the West, and all the time. But they can't just oh, wait a minute. He said, but they can just push their threats up their ass because they started the war and now comes the consequences.
And I'd have to say, and I thank you for the support, I definitely agree with you. The consequences are now coming, and I think that it's better late than never. Although it was a little late, still great to see it come around. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're moving on to the next one. And also, someone said, "Does that include the Space Force?" Yeah, it actually does. Like, there, like, I'm not gonna go through and like list off everything because then people, like, clearly, if you ever come out with criticisms, even if we state other people's criticisms, people are gonna look at them as, being political for the large part because we're, bringing up all of the flaws. But yes, I talk to people in every single one of the branches of the armed forces, barring the Coast Guard. Unfortunately, I don't know anyone in the Coast Guard, but I know people in the Air Force, the Army, the Marines, the Navy, and the Space Force. And out of all 5 of those branches and the people that I know in those branches, all of them that are currently serving, none of them have had positive feedback because a lot of what has been implemented doesn't really make any sense when you look at it beyond just the public optics image of what they're saying and doing. In actual practice and implementation, none of it makes any sense from 5 million different reasons. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Robert McCann, who puts in a 10. And Robert said, are we just getting our troops ready for Russia and China conflicts in the near future? Like, for example, it's a warm-up and flex in Venezuela and South America.
It's possible, but I'm generally doubting it. I actually think that we have some form of a foreign policy prerogative in South America. Whether I understand that or not, or whether anyone understands that or not, it appears that there's some sort of prerogative there, and it's not trying to flex our muscles, because we generally do that through military exercises and war games. But still, big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Hokey Redneck yet again, and he puts in a 10. He said, I hate the new full screen button. I hate it.
Oh, I hate you, full screen button. I hate you. And honestly, there's been a lot of changes recently that I'm not really a big fan of on YouTube with like the user interfaces and stuff. Even on our end, they've changed stuff in our control rooms and stuff that I'm absolutely hating these days. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the Wolfman 6950, who puts in a 10. And they gave very interesting numbers on that one. But thank you very much to the Wolfman for the support. He said, where change handle? Please help. And also, by the way, I fixed mine. I went to my YouTube channel profile and I went and changed the handle for the account. If you change your primary name, like on the main part of the YouTube channel name, it really won't fix it. You have to change your YouTube handle name. So somebody had already taken Enforcer Matt, so I wasn't able to get that one. So I had to put its Enforcer Matt as a difference. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to say, unfortunately, I don't know of any real way to change it. You can change the handle, but you can't change it to show your old username at the moment. But a big thanks to you once again for support. Also, by the way, I see a lot of people like, man, he messed up the ABCs. I was trying to find some way, folks, to like paraphrase it and speed through it, so I didn't do the whole thing. And then it just came out really garbled or garbled. And I was like, oh, whatever, we're just going to keep running with it. But yeah, it was messed up to hell. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to That Girl is Poison, who puts in a 10, who said, keep up that great work.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and we will keep up the great work. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Herb Derp NV, who said, I got an especially cooked hood request. It's an intersection with tents in every direction and gets worse as you go down south down the street. The address is 301 6th Street in Los Angeles, California. Is that the Tenderloin?
301 6th Street.
I think it's the Tenderloin.
What's the address for that again? Because it's got to be the Tenderloin.
At 301 6th Street.
301 6, is that all like one number?
No, 301 6th Street.
In San Francisco.
Oh, no, it was Los Angeles.
6th Street in Los Angeles. Oh, yeah, this is Skid Row. Let's go take a look at it. We already know what we're in for. It's Skid Row. But, oh my lordy, this is like...
Goodness.
Yeah, this is Skid Row. Yeah, like, this is Skid Row.
Also, by the way, the Tenderloin is San Francisco. I got that wrong. I was thinking of San Francisco when I was saying that. This is, like you said, it's Skid Row.
That's why I was getting confused, because when you said the Tenderloin, I was going to San Francisco on the map. This is Skid Row. And now I'm clear. My mind is clear. But yeah, this is a rough place, a very rough one. And from what I've heard, the homeless are usually very violent around here, so you really can't even wander in here without getting jumped. So, unfortunate. But Skid Row has historically been a hellhole forever. Like, I can't really remember a time where Skid Row was ever a nice place historically. I've never heard anyone say anything good about Skid Row. But anyways, with that, I do thank you for support, and this is one hell of a hood, I will say. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Chandler Renteria, who puts in a 10. He said, hi to Lake Blanche. I've backpacked there twice.
Oh, and we will, actually. That sounds really neat. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Kyle Rocco, who puts in a 10. And Kyle said, Road Snacks Fund, and it on your that side of the country. Take a day and check out Yellowstone in the Badlands.
Hey, and thank you so much for support, and maybe we will sometime, but unfortunately we won't have time for that on this move. But a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Darren Quinn, who puts in a 10. And he said, for Matt's dirt bike and endless wheelies into the desert fund. I must say, I like that fund right there. I like that fund quite a lot right there. Honestly, though, I probably couldn't do a dirt bike for real, though, because I don't have a vehicle that can haul a dirt bike. So I wouldn't want to drive it down the road either, because that would be a road illegal, and I'm a law-abiding citizen. But I would say maybe a motorcycle of some sort one day. That would be pretty nice. I'm a motorcycle person, so maybe that would be something good. Maybe a little nice small little bike, a little two wheels, a little small motor, maybe, small, just a little small, maybe two-stroke or something like that, maybe. But that would be pretty neat. But thank you very much, Darren, and I do appreciate that. And we also have an 8 from HBAT, who said, rebrand time, the enforcer and the informer.
The rebrand. They've always been known for their excellence. But still, pretty interesting idea, though, and I do thank you for support and help this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to D. Brian Lovingood 20, and he puts in a 5. He said, will the B-2 strike in South America, or is this just a power play?
It's probably a power play for now, but we're eventually going to strike them here soon. Very soon, as a matter of fact. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Alex. Alex, your last name is something I can't even begin to pronounce, but it looks Czech. But I can't pronounce it. Like, I can't even begin to pronounce it. But thank you very much, Alex, for that $5 support. He said, I don't think Putin is ready for the takedown, and I hope y'all get the reference. Also, RIP to the FN Scar. Got discontinued, sadly.
And rip indeed. I'd have to say, a very unfortunate thing. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep it running. And so with that, a huge thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And also, we have a 5 from Robert Krogan. And Robert said, send the Tomahawks. It's escalating anyway.
Hey, I'd agree. Let's send them anyways. Why not? And so a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Europe 12, who said LOC, and also a 5 from B, who said Enforcer.
Hey, and thank you to both of y'all for the support and helping this thing to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Robert Krogan again, and he puts in a 5 and said, my name is still the same.
Oh, lucky you, buddy. The rest of us are not, so get in line. But still, a big thanks to you once again. And I would have to say, you're very lucky, actually, for that. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Joey Two Guns, and he puts in a 5. He said, I still think this is all the rule to take the Panama Canal, and the U.S. president said they want the Panama Canal already.
Possibly. I mean, it's possible. But a big thanks to you once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Tech Wizard, who said, breaking, the president just canceled all trade negotiations with Canada. And that is true, by the way. I checked it a minute ago. He actually did cancel them all.
Huh, that's interesting. I do thank you for the support and sharing that news with us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Destroyer of Planets, who puts in a 5 and said, if China isn't going to buy Russian oil, do you think it is to collapse Russia so they can take advantage of it, or to push Russia to attack NATO?
It might be both. It's really hard to analyze the Chinese position at the moment because they keep it really close to themselves. So it could be either. That's actually a very, very good sort of analysis that you gave, though, because and analysis-wise, you never want to say it's a definite certainty that one or the other is going to happen. You just want to say that's a high certainty this will happen and a low certainty that the other will happen. I would say that the Chinese, probably knowing them, it's probably a mix of both, but they probably want the Russians to attack NATO first, come out of that war beaten and bruised, and then they'll take advantage of them then and there. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, in my opinion. A big thanks to you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one goes to Butchie777, who just put in a $10 support, and thank you very much, Butchie, for that very heavy $10 support, 10-pound support, and for throwing in that super sticker of the YouTube creature grinding the wheels in that chair right there, that is, around a corner.
Ayo.
Look at that thing. I tell you, that creature's grinding that chair. I tell you what, man, he might have the makings of vice president if he works hard enough. He can maybe graduate up to couches. But Enforcer, what say you?
Aw, man, the way that rhino's in that chair, call it a Tokyo grift. Aw, man. Aw, man, I'm gonna travel around and show off another goofy group of people screaming in the streets and holding rope flares. Aw, man. But beyond that, a huge thanks to you so much for the support, Butchie777, and helping this channel to keep running. And also, I like that rhino and the or that hippo really in the chair doing that sick drift. But a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Tyler Golden Flyer, who puts in the 5, who said Europe is beefing up for World War III, and a way to support them and yourself is to research a company called Rheinmetall. It makes tanks, ammunition, armor, etc.
Oh, yeah, I know about Rheinmetall. You know, Rheinmetall is a great company, really. But a big thanks to you so much once again, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Dario, who puts in a 5. And Dario said, I don't see the U.S. being involved in any direct war this year, and highly likely they'd be a land operation in Mexico next year against cartels. Crazy. Russia to hack some banking credit institutions to help its economy.
Yeah, that's an interesting take right there. We'll have to see if that pans out. But a big thanks to you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from CK Bold, who said, take a live chat question, and we shall grab a live chat right this second in honor of CK Bold. And the live chat question is going to go to none other than Cat Lady, who said, Matt, does Venezuela have rockets to reach MacDill Air Force Base?
No, they do not. Venezuela doesn't have any rockets that we know of that can reach the United States at the moment. So with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. A big thanks to you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ed, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Ed, for that support. He said, Enforcer Matt, Irish Ed here. Hello, LSA. And we keep our head held here. And does this chat stuff remind you of a Twilight Zone?
It kind of does, honestly. It kind of does. But it's good to hear that you're keeping your head held high. And a big thanks to you so much once again for support, Irish Ed, and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Greenskin, who said, how would a civil war be fought today in the West?
really like any other that you'd see around the world. It would pretty much end up in a very similar sort of a way. It would usually end up becoming barbaric, radicalized, and end up leading to the deaths of a load of people, the collapse of the economy, and then once the war ends, you're pretty much left in a crappy hellhole. So that's really how it would end up. That's also why I'm not a big fan of anyone who advocates for civil wars, and not only do I believe that they're traitors to the nation, but they're also too ignorant for their own good, because that is how all civil wars end up, no matter what country you're in. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again for support, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from LJ Jidus 550, and he said, have you seen downtown Salt Lake during Christmas? And I've seen the pictures. It looks very nice down there. They really decked the place out. They decked the halls and the streets down there with those lights. It looks nice. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh man, in Salt Lake City, they deck the halls with bounds of holly. In Alabama, they just deck the halls. They just beat the shit out of you. Oh man, like. Oh man, but still, a big thanks to you for the support. And I haven't really seen that myself personally. I'll have to pull that up after the show. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Oh man, they're so mad in Alabama, they're decking the halls. They said, come here, I'm going to beat the hell out of the halls. Those halls didn't stand a chance. They ripped them to shreds. The wallpaper didn't stand a chance. But anyways, moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Whip, who puts in a 5. And they said Russia's economy is about 4 times larger than Ireland's, and it's crazy to think they're waging such a massive war.
It really is crazy when you think about it like that. Honestly, a lot of people overestimate how economically powerful Russia is compared to their actual output. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. Oh man, hot dog man. Oh man, he has something in common with Alabama. Both Alabama and hot dog man like equal rights, but also Alabama likes equal lefts. Like it's a checkmate. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 3 from Plazoth and a 2 from Bruce Lee. And thank you both very much, Plazoth and Bruce, for that support. And we also have a 2 from Dupper Bob, who said LOL and Slava Ukraine.
And a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And of course, Slava Ukraine, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Nathan Gonzalez, who puts in a 2. He said, hey guys, I love the content and Slava Ukraine.
Hey, and Slava Ukraine, Ram Slava. And a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and the kind words. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Sundown64, who puts in a 2. He said, good evening, Mr. Enforcer and Enforcer Matt.
Hey, and good evening to you. I hope you've been doing well. And a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Tetsumochi, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much for that support. And he said, best guess, will Maduro flee or fight in the end? I'm putting 95% odds on he's going to flee. He's going to run, and he is going to hightail it. In fact, he's going to run so fast it'll probably make your head spin. That's my guess. Maduro seems like a coward to me. He seems like the type that would bolt at the first sign of trouble. He's not going down with a ship. He doesn't seem like the type of guy that stands on morals. That sort of lines up with that thug type stuff that he's doing down there in Venezuela right now with the whole cartel situation. It kind of lines up with it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, me personally, I think Maduro is going to make a run for it as well. I'd have to agree with Matthew on that. But a big thanks to you once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Rye Guy SR, who just threw in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Rye Guy, for that support. We do appreciate that. He said, Matt is someone who has been on 2 wheels since I was about 5 and rides the dirt and the street. Don't find an excuse why not, but work on how. Best stress relief on the planet. Dual sport fun. And take one from the chat and LLT LSA. And honestly, right, guy, you have a very good point. Like, honestly, that was my favorite thing when I had a bike. Like, it really was. Whenever I got stressed, I would go for a ride on the bike, and it actually really did me well. So I really enjoyed it. I hated to get rid of it, but at the same time, I didn't want to ride in this really heavy traffic where we're currently at in Birmingham and then get killed on the bike. I didn't want to, get taken out just from riding a motorcycle. So I had to get rid of it, but I really do enjoy it a lot. Like, I really enjoyed it. And also, I like the whole camaraderie thing with riding motorcycles, too. Everybody's sort of like in a little, like, I hate to say that, it sounds cringy to say like a motorcycle community, but it's like everybody's friendly with everybody that rides a bike. And it's just like instant like conversation starter. I like that. But we will take one from the chat. And Enforcer, what say you?
And we will take one from the chat. And a big thanks to you for the support, Rye SR. And what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat question goes to Nick, who said, what do you think will happen to al-Assad if Russia collapses?
He will probably end up just fleeing to China at that point, probably, or some other country that would take him. So I hope that does address that well. A big thanks to you once again for sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, Matthew, how many super chats do we have left?
2.
Oh, wow. Okay, and so with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to PFC Lumi, who puts in that 2 and said, "You need a U-Hawk to help move, LOL."
Man,
That's actually not a bad business. That's not a bad business idea, actually. Could you imagine that? Like drones that deliver your stuff when you're moving, like instantaneously. That's drone operated. You don't have to have operators in a helicopter. It just lands there. You load your stuff into it. It takes off autonomously and takes it straight to your location where you're moving to. You gotta have a place to land it. But I mean, that's not a bad idea.
Except for the cost per hour to fly a helicopter. Like, that's probably
If you don't have to pay pilots, though, is it really that high of a cost? It's just the fuel cost at that point.
No. It's the wear down of parts and everything else that has to be factored in too. Like, it would be pretty costly still. So I would generally say, I mean, like, like like that would be a great idea if helicopters were cheap to fly, but even without pilots, helicopters would still be very expensive to fly, especially over a long distance like 1,700 miles. That would end up being like tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. But still, a big thanks to you so much for this board. Interesting idea, though. I like the premise of it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Adrian Griffin. And Adrian put in a $1 support. And thank you very much, good sir, for also supporting the channel as well. And we do greatly appreciate any amount of support, big or small. It all means a lot to us. And we do appreciate that very much, Adrian. And thank you very much for being an LSA viewer here on the channel. And with that, folks, we are now jumping into our live chat questions proper. And first, we're grabbing our Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight, we had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Nora Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, Her Royal Fluffiness, Kush, Cubby Tarek Sire, and Brian Blairstown, and they said the Morse says. Now that's more like it. A little bit of sanctions sprinkled on the Russians, an LLT, LSA.
And that is the same Morse code message from last night because I didn't have the time today to make a new one. But ding, 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 that is the sound of money, and even with it being the same Morse code message, the Lee Spring Armory Signal Corps was not tricked, and they got it dead on the nail once again. And I gotta congratulate y'all greatly for getting that Morse code message correct on the second night in a row, and continuing to get it correct time and time again. Truly an amazing thing. And so with that, a humongous shout out to all of y'all in the Lee Spring Armory Signal Corps and the correct Morse code deciphering. And with that, folks, we're actually going to be doing an annotated question segment tonight for the live chats. Although we do have time, I unfortunately do have to say that Enforcer Matt and me, or I don't know for Enforcer Matt, but I am bushed, and also I want to make sure to try and continue packing after the show, so that way we can make sure that we're not in crunch time mode and freak out and panic mode here soon. Because of how much we work, we really have a hard time getting to packing, and I want to make sure that I have as much time today as possible to pretty much try and get everything out of the way as much as we possibly can. And so with that, we're going to be answering 5 live chat questions, and then we're going to be rounding out the stream for the night. So we are on to the 5th to last question of the night.
And this one goes to David Razor. And David said, you say we should keep our focus on China, but isn't Venezuela partly also a first skirmish with China? And thank you in advance.
Kind of in a way, you could definitely look at it, but it's more so just growing influence. A lot like the situations where the U.S. got involved in Central America because of growing Soviet influence. A very similar sort of a perspective. It isn't really a fight against the Chinese, it's a fight against their tendrils expanding economically into a region that's strategically important for the United States. So not really a direct fight with China or even a warm-up, because they're not going to be involved at all in Venezuela. We're just trying to curb Chinese influence from showing up in our backyard in any way, and possibly expanding further from there. So with that, I hope that has addressed it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the 4th to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Quantum Fighter, who said, hasn't Maduro basically promised to do everything the USA wants except abdicating?
Apparently that's what we've heard, and the US just still wouldn't accept that. I don't know why. I mean, like, if he's offering everything, we have really nothing more to ask rather than his deposition from power. But apparently that's still not enough. So I guess we're going to depose him eventually. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And we are on to the 3rd to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Recluse, who said, do y'all think it's possible that India and China are only pretending to stop purchases of Russian oil, but will continue doing so off the books?
That's pretty much impossible to do off of the books because we can just track the ships that are carrying the crude and where they're going, and if they continue to purchase them, we'll certainly know, and also we'll know the volume involved as well. So it's not really something you can keep secret because there's just so much data and information around the world that circles around these ships and these purchase orders, and also since these are all publicly traded companies, they have to let their shareholders know what they're purchasing and what they're doing. So there's just so many different leaks where information can come from that would let us get the full picture that really isn't possible for them to try and conceal it or hide it too well. That's also why we know about the Russian shadow tankers, because once again, they are so well publicly documented in what they're doing and where they're going and what cargo they're carrying. We already know which ships are working for the Russians and which ones are selling their oils overseas and skirting sanctions. And so with that, I hope that has addressed that well, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to TS Actual, who said, I have a question about this. He said, I heard a rumor that a Storm Shadow recently eliminated up to 500 North Korean soldiers in central Russia that were assembled in a formation. Is it true?
No, no, that's not true. I haven't heard of a report like that or any video or picture evidence of such an attack. So that sounds to be a stretch. Probably one of those miracle things that they always talk about, like the train hijackings and stuff. So I haven't heard about it myself personally. Also, we have a $5 super chat from Ryan H. And Ryan H said, what is the likelihood the Russian government / oligarchs oust Putin before the economy completely collapses? I have a feeling the chances are increasing really with every passing month at this point, from non-existent levels to levels that are starting to become a dangerous threat to Putin's power. So I'd actually have to say it's getting on up there. I can't really say for certain how high it would be, but I would say at least a 25% chance on any given month. So with that, a big thanks to you once again for support, Ryan H. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Kit Boga, who said, I have a question. Since Russia broke the nuclear non-proliferation agreement by giving Belarus nuclear weapons, should the USA sell nuclear weapons to Ukraine?
We actually don't know if they violated the non-proliferation treaty because there's a lot of mystery about who actually operates the nukes in Belarus. Sometimes the Belarusians make it sound like they're operating them, but every time the Russians talk about them, it's fairly clear that they're the ones who are actually operating the missiles, but they're inside of Belarus. So if that is the case, which that's generally what I'm leaning towards, because I wouldn't see any logical scenario where Russia would just freely give nuclear weapons to Belarus and then have them under Belarusian control and not theirs. That is very similar to the U.S. forward deploying nuclear weapons into Poland. And while that's escalatory, it really doesn't arise to the sort of escalatory threat necessary for us to start giving nuclear weapons to Ukraine. And also, I generally would never be a big fan of nuclear proliferation, even if our enemies are doing it. At that point, they're just multiplying the number of nuclear targets, targets that we're nuking in the future when we get to that point, and it really doesn't change anything farther than that. So I hope that does address that at least the best I can, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the last person that threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is John Anderson. And he said, here's a thought. What if this was a psyop by the U.S. military to see where the roaches will scatter to? And I have a feeling the military wanted those roaches to scatter.
Can you reread that one again?
He said, this is a thought. What if it was a psyop by the U.S. military to see where the roaches will scatter to? And I have a feeling the military wanted those roaches to scatter.
Why do you say roaches that way, man? You said the roaches. Like, bro, you're like...
That's just the way I say it.
Honestly. But beyond that, I would have to say it's possible. That's actually what we do in the Middle East to find out where anything important is that we tell them, oh, we're gonna bomb key targets, and then they just watch on satellite for people to start leaving an area, and then they go, that's clearly where our weapons cache is, and then they bomb it, and it's almost always a successful hit. So that could be something that we were doing there. I also think it's just to keep the Venezuelan armed forces on high alert and eventually exhaust them through generally just attrition from them being on high alert endlessly because of these actions. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to say that we are entirely honored and greatly appreciative to have had each and every single one of y'all here watching tonight. It is an absolute honor and a great pleasure that we have to get to tell you all the news each and every single night, and I hope that y'all have enjoyed our stream once again. If y'all have, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to have y'all here, and we always love to see people joining the Lee Spring Army and the Enforcer channel, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours hours of news from around the world, and if there is a short war video to be made, I, the Enforcer, will be the one making it and showing it to you all tomorrow, if there is one to be made. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Leaf Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern on the next Nightly War News stream, and also in that midday video as well if there is enough news to cover. And Enforcer will be the one bringing you that video tomorrow if there is enough news for it. But excuse me, I'm choking here at the very end. They call him a choke artist. They said he's really good at choking. He chokes himself. He's a, sir, like, have a little air. Try not to choke on spittle. Try not to spittle. But anyways, thank you all for joining us once again tonight in all seriousness. And a huge shout out to the 90,000 people that were here by the very end of the stream. And we appreciate all of you very, very much. But with that, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest and good night.
To